What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was born blind but his eyes awakened a god-tier Dojutsu? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Here Naruto. Come to Papa, Minato smiled, holding out his arms. Naruto, a 7-month-old ball of energy, looked around for the voice he heard. What was that voice? Papa. It was Papa. A smile crept onto Naruto's face and he felt around for something to grab onto. Reaching out to anything, he was relieved to find there was something hard and he pulled himself up. Minato smiled, getting the camera ready with one hand, and holding out the other to his son, once more. Naruto tilde, he cooed, calling for his son, again. Naruto's head turned, hearing that happy, loving voice he adored more than anything. He giggled and pushing himself up, wobbling unsteadily. Minato reached out and prepared to catch his child if he should fall. But Naruto grabbed onto the coffee table once more and steadied himself. Minato sighed in relief, and then called his name once more, soothingly this time. Naruto may not have known this emotion very well yet, but determination was forming in his heart. He wanted to get to Papa. He wanted to walk. One clumsy foot stepped forward and he let go of the table. Minato smiled. Come to Papa, Naru-chan, you can do it. Minato encouraged him. One foot in front and then the other foot in front. He was walking. Yes, Naruto. Come to Papa. Minato smiled, tears of happiness falling from his eyes. He was happy, so happy. His child could walk. He was taking his first steps. The blessed miracle given to him from the only woman he ever loved, the child he helped to create, was walking. Naruto, feeling it different in his life, smiled. He was doing something new and it was different. It was making his papa happy, from what he could hear. Yes, Naruto, you did it. Minato cheered as Naruto walked 10 baby steps from the coffee table to his arms. All by himself. Minato picked up Naruto and started dancing and swinging him around. The child, enjoying the fast movement, now felt he was flying. Without a care in the world, he was happy. They both were. Minato smothered his baby boy with kisses and cuddles, tears still falling. He didn't care how silly they must have looked on camera. He was happy, so very, very happy. Pride, happiness and hope, all together mixed in one emotion, fluttered in his body. Papa is so proud of you, Naruto. Minato told his son, lovingly, giving his child one last kiss. Minato smiled and laughed a bit seeing his little Naruto yawning, obviously worn out from practice and his accomplishment. Naruto closed his cloudy blue eyes. Minato sighed. His son was blind, but even despite that, he learned how to walk. Rocking him to slumber, vowing softly into his son's ear, like he did every night. Promising him to protect him, even if it cost him his life. 6 years later, To-san, a happy voice came from a cozy warm house. It was hidden by a large stone wall and a front gate. The wall wasn't built too long ago, 6 years to be exact. Minato was a bit paranoid, fearing his son might fall down the large hill they were nestled on and into the street. Minato had a strict rule, not only outside but inside too. To-san, stop, that tickles. A giggling voice laughed, begging for mercy from the tickle monster. Minato didn't stop, in fact, he just moved to a new place to tickle the 6-year-old. Poor Naruto, he felt that if he were to be tickled anymore, he'd either die of laughing or burst. To-san, really? Stop. This outburst was more demanding and sad-sounding. Immediately Minato stopped. I'm sorry, Naru-chan. I thought you were joking that time, he told him, apologetically. Minato ran his fingers through the small blonde's blonde hair. Naruto gave his father a cute smile and then pounced on him, this time tickling him. It wasn't really tickling, but Minato dared not to tell his son that. Instead, he pretended to laugh easily, fooling the child. When Minato decided it was time for a bath, he picked up Naruto and cuddled with him, just for a few seconds to calm him down. Okay, Naru-chan, time for a bath, Minato announced. Ah, To-san. Naruto pouted, sticking out his tongue in disagreement. You're getting a bath, Naruto, Minato told him firmly but with a smile. He then carried the 6-year-old to the tub. To-san? Naruto asked, as his father was taking of his clothes in preparation for the bath. Yes, son? Minato smiled. Well, I heard the other day from some of the kids that school is starting. Am I old enough to go this year? Naruto asked with hope. Minato did take Naruto to a local park to play with some of the other children in the village, and of course, Naruto had heard them talking about starting at the academy soon. Minato knew his son really wanted to go, but he was hesitant. His son was not normal. His blindness was one thing, the Kyuubi was another. Looking at his son's face, he could see the want and desire clearly. He swallowed hard, wishing that his son hadn't asked that. Minato knew Naruto wouldn't like the answer. We'll see, Naruto. Let me think about it, Minato answered. Naruto pouted, but didn't say anything would have to think about this one. First and foremost, his parental side wanted to say an immediate no. No way would he let Naruto go to the academy, where he could be picked on, but most of all discriminated against because he couldn't see. That's where his ninja side kicked in. He wanted nothing more than to let Naruto go and become a good ninja, but what if they turned him down because of his blindness? Would you like bubbles? Minato asked. Naruto nodded happily. Naruto loved bubbles, sure he couldn't see what they really were, but they felt funny. Naruto soaked in a watery oil and then rinsed once more outside the tub. When Naruto rested in the warm water, he immediately attacked the bubbles, giggling and smiling. It felt funny, soapy and smelled really great. Minato smiled and leaned against the wall opposite of the tub and let Naruto play for a while, after a few minutes of thinking whether Naruto should go to school or not. Naruto realized it was quiet in the room. "San?" he called out. Minato looked up. Oh, sorry, now-chan, ready to get out?" He smiled. Naruto nodded, holding up his arms for Minato to pick him up. Minato wrapped a warm towel around Naruto and started to dry him off, making sure to get behind the ears and back of his head around his neck. Minato then picked up Naruto, carrying him back to his room. Laying Naruto very carefully on his bed, he made his way to the dresser to pick out something for Naruto to wear. Naruto thought they had room to roll around and goof off a bit, but he was wrong and took a tumble off the bed. "Naruto!" Minato yelled, running to Naruto. "Are you okay?" he asked, checking for a bruise. Naruto admitted it hurt just a tad bit, but it wasn't anything serious, he knew. "I'm fine, San. Really, I am," he insisted. He tried to get himself on his bed again. Using his hands, he felt the knobs on his nightstand. He knew that was right next to the bed. Using the stand, he pulled himself up and over to his bed. Minato finally chose something for him to wear and he helped Naruto slip on the clothes. "Would you like a story, Naruto?" Minato asked. Naruto nodded. He loved it when his San would read him stories. But at times, Naruto wished he didn't have to ask to be read a story. At times, he wished he could read all by himself. But then again, he wished he could do other things that involved sight. Naruto felt his eyes become heavy and he closed them, telling himself he'd rest for a few minutes, but it turned out he fell asleep. Minato continued reading. He didn't realize Naruto was asleep until he was finished with the book. He smiled, and then planted a kiss on Naruto's soft forehead, tucking him into the covers a bit more to keep warm. He adjusted a stuffed animal that sat on the top shelf and started fumbling with the wires on the back of it. What Naruto didn't know was in the bear was a camera. The house was full of them. But some were there before Naruto was born and he was only dating Kushina. The camera was used for security reasons, because he was the Hokage. But about 20 new cameras were installed a few months after Naruto was born. Not only were they inside, but outside as well. The cameras were used for Minato to not only see if any trespassers or killers were on his property, but to check on Naruto if he was in a different room without Minato. "There we go," Minato smiled. The camera in the bear became blurry at times because of the fur. Minato then walked out of the room, leaving the door open a crack. Heading to his office, he flicked on the small TV that was on his desk next to a stack of papers. It showed every room in the house and all of outside. While working late, he would take a glance at the TV now and then. The only things that changed were Naruto, due to his tossing and turning in his sleep, or the trees blowing in the summer wind. It was about midnight when he finished his work. He stood up and cracked his back. Taking a glance at the TV, he noticed a plant pot was spinning until it fell over. Minato's eyes glared. Someone was on his property. Taking out a kunai, he raced to where his son was sleeping, and there he saw a dark figure in the window, coming into his son's room. He jumped on the small figure, dragged him out of the room and away from Naruto, holding a kunai to his throat. "You little bastard, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Minato hissed. Sen. The person tried to reason, but couldn't talk. Minato was now choking him. "You think you can harm my child? Well, think again," Minato shouted. "Senator, see, it's me." The victim gasped for hair. She. Kakashi? Minato asked, and in surprise, let go of his former student and got to help the young ninja, and sure enough it was Kakashi. Minato now felt 10 times as guilty as he did when he stepped on and broke one of Naruto's favorite toys. Minato patted his ex-student on the back to help him breathe better. Then going back into his son's room quietly, he brought back a glass of water he left on the nightstand that Naruto never touched. He always gave Naruto a glass of water before he went to bed. He didn't want his son to get hurt trying to get a drink in the middle of the night. "Damn, think your security is tight enough?" Kakashi asked, obviously scared and pissed. "Sorry about that," Minato apologized. "What were you doing anyway?" Kakashi picked out a stuffed fox from a small bag he had on his back. Minato chuckled. "Is that for Naruto?" "Yes. I was done with a mission early and I just happened to be close to a fair. Figured I'd stop and try and get Naruto something." Kakashi gave the fox to his sensei who promised he'd show it to Naruto first thing in the morning. They headed into the living room where they sipped on tea. "Why didn't you knock on the door?" Minato asked. "I would have answered. I thought you both were sleeping and I didn't want to wake anyone. Guess he'll never make that mistake ever." Kakashi mumbled that last part to himself. Minato smiled sadly. "I'm sorry, I guess I'm a bit paranoid when it comes to things like safety for Naruto." "I bet you don't even let him walk around without you," Kakashi stated. He knew he was right. Minato was very strict when it came to anything revolving around Naruto's safety. Kakashi was surprised the child wasn't in a cage hanging from the ceiling or on a leash. Minato furrowed his brows. "What's that supposed to mean?" he demanded. Kakashi looked up. "Do you want Naruto to depend on you for the rest of his life? Are you going to carry him across stage when he's 12 and graduated? Are you going to carry him down the aisle when he's going to get married? Will you take care of him when he's old and in pain when you yourself are 6 feet underground? Minato, you have to let him go. Let him learn and adapt to his surroundings. You'd be surprised about how much he could do. What I am saying is, will you hold his hand forever? He's not going to be a child forever, you know." "I know that," Minato snapped. "It's just," then he felt tears. "He's all I have." Kakashi didn't mean to push him that far. He understood how much Naruto meant to Minato, but he didn't want to see Naruto being helpless the rest of his life. "I understand, sensei, but what will happen when you're gone and he's still here? Who will take care of him?" Now, we don't need to worry about that." Minato smiled. "Thank you for your concern, Kakashi, but really, we're fine." That smile. Kakashi knew it held pain, sadness and loss of hope. But what would the poor kid do if his father weren't there? Kakashi couldn't imagine Naruto being alone with no parents and being blind. XCX. The next morning, Naruto awoke to the soft melody playing on the child alarm clock he had. He knew that when it was playing, that it was time to get up. He reached over, listening to the sound, and turned it off with one light tap with his hand. He also noticed something else in his bed. It felt like a toy. He didn't remember going to sleep with any stuffed animals. It felt new and smelled different. "Ah, I see you've noticed the fox toy Kakashi gave you." Naruto turned to the sound and smiled. Minato placed the fox there before he had gone to bed. He thought it would make a nice surprise for his son to wake up to. "Ah, so that's what it is. Tell him I said, thank you, to San." Naruto smiled, clutching onto the stuffed fox and cuddling with it. Minato smiled, and picked up Naruto. "Come on, breakfast is ready," Minato told him. Naruto grinned at this, but soon frowned when Minato explained how he was to have a checkup at the hospital later today. Naruto hated hospitals. "Now, just relax," Minato soothed Naruto, who was currently using his coat as a tent to hide from the hospital. Mintao found this a bit embarrassing, but he desperately wanted to, seeing how innocent and cute the sight was. He thanked whatever god there were not many people in the waiting room. "Want me to relax? Take me to Hawaii," Naruto replied in a snide tone. Minato frowned. "I'm only taking you here for a checkup. Why are you even worried about this place? There's nothing to be afraid of." "Oh no. Except the burning cream they put in my eyes and the bandages I have to wear for 5 weeks after." Naruto almost yelled. Minato sighed. Ever since Naruto's doctor, Tsunade, prescribed Naruto with cream for his eyes, Naruto complained and cried because of the burning sensation it gave him. Minato felt a little bit of himself die every night he had to apply the cream to Naruto, as hearing his baby wail and scream in pain was something Minato always tried to avoid. "But you said the pills aren't bad," Minato reminded him. Naruto also had pills, along with the cream. They were to help prevent any headaches that would cause any more damage to his eyes or brain. Naruto didn't swallow the pills. Minato was informed it would be safe to smash it up and put the powder in apple sauce or water for Naruto to take instead of swallowing. "No, they're not, but they're dumb." Naruto pouted. Minato shook his head in dismay at Naruto's antics. Naruto never acted belligerent like this in public. He was usually the same sweet boy he was at home, but hospitals were something else. It was like Naruto wasn't Naruto. It was like Naruto was some brat from a dark corner of a parent's worst nightmare. Minato sighed. After an attempt to have Naruto sit on the chair and be a good boy, which he failed, he figured he'd leave Naruto alone until it was time for Tsunade to see him. But for whatever reason, Naruto's doctor was taking a while, and Minato knew he and Naruto weren't her only patients, but Naruto didn't know that. "Can we go home now?" he whined. Minato looked at the floor where Naruto was sitting, still using his white coat as a tent. "No," Minato answered, going back to his magazine. "Not yet. The doctor hasn't seen you yet." "Ugh," Naruto whined, clearly impatient with having to wait. A little boy about Naruto's age with dark brown hair was coughing violently. Minato felt bad for the small child, but at the same time, he hoped Naruto wouldn't get sick. The boy was waiting with his mommy when he noticed someone hiding under the Hokage's coat. Naruto became hot under his father's coat and decided to sit in the chair. The boy noticed Naruto and his eyes widened. Naruto didn't know it, but the boy was staring at him, and if he could see he would have noticed the boy's frightened face. "Mommy, that boy's eyes are weird." The child just had to yell out. This caught Naruto's attention. Knowing that was directed to him, he felt very embarrassed and upset. He bit his lip and leaned into his father, trying to hide his face, not knowing if anyone was staring at him. No one was, just the boy and now his frightened mother. Hokage-sama," she apologized. I'm so sorry, he's only 4. It's alright, but I think it's Naruto who needs to be apologized to." Minato tried not to hiss. He knew that it was only a child, but still, kids can be really cruel. The boy, Minato noticed, didn't say a word, either he himself was ashamed or scared. What made Minato even madder was the mother didn't do much about it. Minato sighed, as Naruto moved and sat in his lap and nuzzled into his toned chest. "Naruto, it's okay. No one's looking," he whispered. "Don't care," he muttered, very upset at the moment. About 10 more minutes later, a nurse opened the door. "Naruto?" she called out. Naruto turned his head around. Who called his name? Minato smiled and grabbed his coat off the ground, then carried Naruto to the lady. She smiled sweetly at Minato. "Right this way," she said. Minato carried a fidgeting but quiet Naruto into Tsunade's office. The honey blonde-haired woman smiled at Minato. "Hey, blondie," she joked. Minato smiled back. "Old woman," Minato teased back. "Well, is Naruto ready?" Tsunade asked. Minato laid Naruto on the hospital bed and sat next to him. Naruto immediately moved towards his father's warmth, not wanting to go near the doctor, but Minato held him down when Tsunade came closer. "Okay, we'll apply the cream now, and then I want a few pictures," she began. "Pictures?" Naruto asked. Tsunade nodded. "Yes, it's special camera I use to look at the inside of your eyes, to see if any nerves might affect your brain, and we don't want that." Naruto didn't understand a word she said and he gave her a confused look. "Well, Naruto, there are special nerves in the back of your eyes that are connected to your brain in your head. We don't want anything to be wrong with these nerves because it will hurt your head. So with the pictures I take, it will help me see if anything is wrong." Tsunade tried hard to not use any medical terms in her sentence and tried to dumb down her speech so Naruto could understand her. Minato looked at Tsunade and nodded. Tsunade had been Naruto's pediatrician for 6 years, ever since he was a baby, so she knew how he'd act to the cream being put on his eyes. She sighed. Naruto, I'm going to put on the cream after I take some pictures. If you have nothing wrong there will only be a little to maybe none at all. Naruto smiled at that, but Tsunade started. Naruto then frowned, knowing, but was never a good word and the tone she had it in didn't make it any better. But, if there is something serious, then I need to put in a lot of cream. I know it will burn and it's not fun at all. But you're a big boy, you can handle it, right? She was testing him. Minato smiled, come on, Naruto, ninjas aren't afraid of any pain. Naruto looked up. So, if I take this cream, I'll go to the academy? He asked, hopeful. Minato gulped. No, that's not what I said. I said ninjas aren't afraid of pain. Yet, I'm afraid of losing you. Naruto frowned. He had hoped his two-san would have said, yes. Tsunade brought over what was hooked up to a portable computer. Turning it on clicking a few times, she walked over to Naruto, and she moved over what Minato told Naruto was a mini telescope. Naruto had to look into the two tubes and a little flash appeared in the computer when a picture was taken. Naruto didn't mind this at all, no pain whatsoever. After the pictures, Tsunade frowned. Minato felt uneasy then. Well, it looks like nothing's changed, which is good and bad. It's good because, well, it's not worse, but bad in the fact that they're not better either. Naruto, do you remember last time when I told you that your eyes weren't very good? Tsunade asked. Naruto nodded. He remembered everything she said. So, my tubes or nerves are bad? He asked. It would have been sweet due to the fact that he had a hard time pronouncing the word, but Minato felt guilty. He felt it was his fault Naruto's eyes were screwed. Tsunade sadly smiled. Yes, Naruto, you're right. And remember what I mentioned, how if something was serious then we'd have to use more cream. Naruto then panicked. No, 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 he screamed, trying to run out of the room. Minato caught him just in time. He nodded to Tsunade, both acting like this was a regular thing. And it was. SSSH, baby, Minato tried to soothe. No, I don't want it, I don't want it, Naruto screamed. Naruto didn't know it, but the cream would be helping him. But Naruto never thought of that, since he was only 6, all his attention focused on the burning sensation the cream brought him. Minato tightened his grip on Naruto's arms and kept a firm grip on him. Tsunade began to take a fairly large amount of cream and spread it on a cotton ball. She looked at Minato, almost signaling that she was ready whenever he was. Minato nodded and Tsunade began rubbing the cotton ball on Naruto's eyes. Naruto felt the burning and he wiggled and screamed. Ice cream, Naruto, we'll get ice cream, and ramen after that. Minato soothingly said. And how about a toy? Would you like a nice new toy after this? Minato was close to tears himself. He couldn't help but feel very guilty at the moment. Naruto just continued to wail and cry, trying to kick Minato off of him, but failed. Tsunade began to put more cream on a new clean cotton ball, preparing to do the next eye. Minato tried to calm Naruto down, from telling him how brave he was. Well, he wasn't really being brave, but he was acting better than last time, to promising him they'll stop at the pet store to play with the puppies. When Tsunade placed the cotton ball on Naruto's other eye, Naruto lost it. He screamed as if someone had shot him. Minato was surprised he hadn't lost his voice. Naruto began to calm down once he felt the bandages wrap around his head, covering his eyes and the bridge of his nose. It was tied tightly in the back of his head, but his blonde hair still stuck out through the bandage. When Tsunade was finished, Minato slowly let go of Naruto, and the poor child curled up in a small ball and cried softly. Naruto. Minato spoke. Come here. Naruto sat up and Minato wrapped his arms around his trembling child. I know you didn't like that one bit. But don't worry, we won't have to come back for quite a while, I promise. Minato wasn't so sure that he spoke the truth, and the pictures of Naruto's inner eyes proved him wrong. But anything to keep his child from crying. After they left the hospital, Naruto was still very upset. Maybe even worse. Minato looked at Naruto while carrying him as they walked on the sidewalk. So, would you like some ramen, Naruto? He asked, hoping Naruto would say, yes, and be happy again. Naruto shook his head. He turned down the pet store, ice cream and now ramen. Minato sighed. But remember, when we get home, you have to take the pills and then I want you to have a nap, okay? Naruto nodded, not really wanting to do anything but that. When they approached the gate, Minato put Naruto on the ground for a moment and quickly with his hands, performed an unsealing jutsu. When the barrier was open, and the gate door opened as well, Minato picked up Naruto once more and walked up the hill to their home, allowing the barrier behind them to close on its own. Okay. You can listen to the TV for a while, I have to put your medication away, I'll be right back. Minato explained, placing Naruto on the couch and flipping on the TV for Naruto to listen to some cartoons. Naruto didn't pay any attention to the TV. He usually loved to listen to the happy voices on the TV for fun sometimes. At the moment, he just wasn't into it. Meanwhile, Minato was carefully putting away the new bottles of pills into the cabinet and putting certain amounts of pills in little boxes, which Naruto was required to take daily. Then filling up a glass with water, he began to smash some pills up and then scraped the powder substance off of the cutting board he used, making it fall into the cup. He took the glass and small bowl of strawberries and placed them in front of Naruto. How about later I take you to the park? Would you like that? Minato asked Naruto. Naruto shrugged. Please, talk Naruto. Minato almost begged. I don't want to play the guessing game. Maybe, Naruto answered. Not now though, I don't want to. Maybe the hospital visit wasn't such a good idea after all. The paranoid father thought. I knew I should have waited until later to take him. Now he's going to be upset all day. Minato sighed, sadly. Instead of going to his office to finish his paperwork, he decided to stay with Naruto. Both father and son sat in relative silence. The TV was still going, for a few minutes, and during that silence, nothing needed to be said to explain how they felt. Hopeless. Hello, a voice called. Anyone home? The old pervert had seen a lot in his days, but this was quite a sight to see indeed. 10 cameras watched his every move as he walked to the house on the hill. He managed to step in the wrong spot and a rope net pulled him into the air. Ah, damn, Minato. God damn it, if this is one of your pranks, I'm going to kill you. The white-haired pervert screamed. From his office, taking his eyes off the screen of the small TV on his desk, he looked outside. Seeing his old teacher hanging in his rope net, half smiling and half annoyed. It had taken a while to put Naruto to sleep for a nap and all he wanted was to get some paperwork done. He'll leave him there for a few more minutes. The yellow flash told himself. Of course he was the one who took Jiraiya down, which resulted in awkward silence while they sat at the table in the living room. So what's with all the high security? There were only a few cameras last I was here, the retired teacher spoke. Last time you were here was Christmas. 6 months ago, Minato spat. What's your problem? He sighed. I took Naruto to the doctor today, and it didn't go well. In fact, he tried to run out of the room this time. His face blushed and he felt worse than before. Jiraiya looked at his ex-student. So, are the cream and pills even working? He asked. A little. Naruto doesn't feel any pains in his head or eyes. Minato remembered the nights he'd stay up holding a screaming toddler who cried in pain due to the pain of the headaches or burning Naruto would receive. Minato remembered holding Naruto, not knowing what else to do, and poor Naru-chan would have to suffer until Minato found a temporary healing jutsu to calm down the infection. How about chakra? Jiraiya asked. Minato asked. Oh, well, Naruto has no idea how to even control his chakra, considering the Kyuubi sealed in him. That's what the academy's for, dumbass, and with that the old pervert nudged him. Minato frowned. It was one big circle. He didn't want Naruto going to the academy, but with Naruto's blindness he would be able to control his sights. Even if they were blurry and were temporarily. Yes. But, what if he gets picked on, or hurt? Minato yelled. What if teachers dislike him because of his condition? Jiraiya sighed sadly. Minato did have a point, but then, he replied softly. You hold him. If he's picked on, you remind him of how much you love him, and if teachers turn him down, remind him to be strong and that he is smart. Keep on doing that, and he'll succeed, and with that he added a smile. Minato smiled back. You're right. Well, Naruto will be happy when he wakes up to hear the good news about him going to school. Oh, would you like to join us for dinner? No, that's okay. But I would like for you to point out safe places to walk out of your property without getting tied up. It wasn't a question. It was an insult, but Minato brushed it off. Naru-chan. Minato spoke at dinner. Naruto looked up after being scalded to leave his bandages alone. He was given some exciting news. Darling, I have decided that you are old enough to go to the academy on one condition. Naruto was close to doing flips at the moment. He was so happy. Yes, Tusan? Anything. He didn't care what he had to do as long as he went to the academy. If anyone says anything about your blindness, I want you to tell me, whether it be a teacher or a student. Understand? Minato spoke firmly. Yes, Papa. Naruto smiled. Oh, so I'm Papa now that I've given you something? Minato teased. You'll always be Papa. Naruto smiled. I sure hope so, Minato thought. Then while hearing Naruto ramble on and on of how happy he was and excited, a little whisper in the back of his mind kept telling himself that this was a bad idea. Of course Minato didn't know how right that voice was until it was too late. For the following 3 weeks, Minato had heard endless squeals of excitement coming from Naruto. The child was so excited to finally be able to go to the academy and learn jutsus and everything else there was to be a ninja. Naruto was too busy being excited and overjoyed he never noticed the depressed vibe coming from his father. Even though Minato was both happy and excited for Naruto, and he himself couldn't be more than happy to hear his son happy, but he was very anxious. A number of things could happen to Naruto. But his ex-teacher's words would always come into play, and he reassured himself that Naruto would be fine. Then came the day before the academy. Minato had just arrived home from work when he called out for Naruto. "Naru-chan, where are you?" he called, in a playful tone. No answer, no sound. "Naruto?" he called. Where was his little boy? Minato went into his office and flicked on the TV, staring at the screen, until he noticed in Naruto's room a curled-up sad little boy. Frowning in confusion, Minato walked swiftly out of the room to Naruto's room, knocking on the door first instead of barging in like he would want to. "Naru-chan? It's Papa. Are you in there?" he asked. "Go away," Naruto replied sadly. "Please, Naruto, what's the matter?" the worried father asked, as he tried to open the door, but it was a tad bit difficult because of the chair in front of the door that Naruto put there. However, being who Minato was, he was able to get past the barrier Naruto had put there. His emotions had been triggered by this action and he went into full overprotective mode. "Naruto, how many times have I told you to not block the door?" Minato didn't like the idea of Naruto blocking the door, it was just something that bothered him. "Don't care," Naruto mumbled. "Go away, Naruto. What's the matter?" Minato asked, walking to his son and crouching next to him. A soft hand was placed on Naruto's back, rubbing soothing circles, slowly. Naruto sniffed and Minato noticed his bandages, formerly in the eye placements, were wet. Had Naruto been crying? Minato felt awful. Had something happened to Naruto when he left? No, nothing happened, he was sure of it. Naruto was to stay home, not alone of course. An Anbu officer, well 3 of them, were stationed to watch him, while Minato went out shopping for supplies Naruto would need for tomorrow. "Please tell me what's wrong, Naruto," Minato almost begged. I don't want to go anymore," Naruto whimpered. "Go where? The academy?" Minato asked. Naruto nodded, another set of tears forming, soaking his bandages. "Well, why not?" Minato asked. "For weeks you've been jumping for joy about going, now suddenly you don't want to." "Why pumpkin? I don't want to be laughed at," Naruto answered, "like at the hospital." Minato remembered now. It seemed Naruto hadn't forgotten what happened a few weeks ago at the hospital when the boy called Naruto's eyes weird and scary. Minato understood now. Naruto must have anxiety because of tomorrow. Minato pulled Naruto into his lap, and Naruto willingly took the offer and cuddled next to his father. "Naruto, now listen to me. I can't change what children might say about your eyes, but remember what I said?" Minato asked. Naruto looked up, bandages still wet, and he shook his head. "You said a lot the past weeks, Tusan." Minato had to laugh at that. "Well, yes, but remember what I said about what you're to do if anyone teases you?" he asked. Naruto thought for a moment, he knew but he didn't. He shrugged. Minato spoke. "That if anyone, whether it be a teacher or a student, says anything about your eyes, you are to tell me. I want to know everything they say. Good or bad." Naruto nodded. "And Naruto, if anyone makes fun of you, don't listen to them." Minato snuggled into Naruto a bit more, then moving his hands down he tickled his baby, making Naruto laugh. Minato was happy he could make his child smile again. But then he remembered he would have to change his bandages. "Naruto, I'll have to change your bandages. You can't have them wet." Naruto nodded, holding onto Minato's hand as Minato led Naruto to the bathroom where he kept Naruto's bandages. Naruto then thought of something else. Papa? He asked. Yes, Angel? Minato said. Do I have to wear my bandages at school? Naruto asked. Naruto knew he would get teased about his eyes, but he was sure he'd get a ton of stares and questions if he wore the bandages to school. Minato sighed and told Naruto, yes, much to Naruto's displeasure. Naruto crossed his arms and pouted. Although it was a cute sight, Minato knew what Naruto really meant. I'm sorry, Naruto. It's doctor's orders. Can't I just lie to them? Naruto asked. They'll find out the truth, and what will that make you look like? Minato asked. And one more thing, Naruto. Naruto gave a questioning look. Don't ever lie. Minato warned. Naruto gulped. He knew that tone of voice. It was the same voice Minato used when Naruto was in trouble or was about to receive a spanking. Naruto nodded, knowing his father was serious. Minato smiled, knowing he had gotten Naruto to realize that lying was wrong. But, Naruto? Minato spoke. Yes? Naruto asked. You do know the punishment if you do lie, Minato warned again. Yes, Papa. I do, Naruto stuttered. Well, of course you do, and I don't need to remind you, because you're a good boy. He smiled, running his fingers through his son's hair. Now, it's dinner time. What are we going to eat, Naruto? Ramen, Naruto shouted. No, Minato answered wearily. If he let Naruto have his way, his son would eat nothing but ramen every meal of the day, 7 days a week. AAAW. Papa, please? Naruto begged. Maybe tomorrow, Minato told him. Minato had trouble sleeping that night. When he tucked Naruto into bed, he stayed a few extra minutes to watch his small child dream of the next day. He was only 27 and he already felt like an old man. His son was growing up. Minato then thought to himself, what if the children at the school really did make fun of Naruto? A strong protective instinct took over the man's heart. If he could be with Naruto to ensure no one would hurt his precious son's feelings, he would in a heartbeat. I'm being ridiculous, Minato told himself. I can't go with Naruto to school every day. He left his son's room and went downstairs to his office to do some work. A couple hours had passed when he heard a knock came from the front door. Minato got up to answer it. Iruka? He asked. He came face to face with a smiling brunette. Hello Hokage-sama, Iruka smiled. I came over here to deliver the paperwork, Kakashi couldn't. He looked really tired, so I told him I'd do it. Oh, thank you, Minato answered. I'll get to work right on it. Iruka was puzzled. It's midnight, I'm surprised I didn't wake you up. Can't sleep? He asked. I know, I'm a bit nervous. Naruto is starting the academy in a few hours, Minato admitted. Iruka was surprised. In all his years of knowing the taller blonde, he knew how protective of Naruto he was. When Naruto was a baby, you had to prove you were even worthy of even looking at the babe. Of course Tsunade put an end to that when Jiraiya wanted to prove that she was really Tsunade by doing something a bit perverted. Now he was actually letting Naruto join the academy to be a ninja? What? Minato asked, looking at Iruka's confused and almost disturbed face. You're really letting him into the academy? Wow. Iruka smiled. Hey, I'm teaching there now, wouldn't it be funny if I wound up teaching Naruto? And with that Iruka added a laugh. Suddenly a light bulb lit right above Minato's head. Yeah, Minato smiled, evilly looking at Iruka. Iruka looked scared. What are you gonna do? He asked, stepping back as the evil-looking Minato walked slowly to him. Papa, time to get up. It's school time, Naruto gushed. Minato woke up with a jolt, staring at his son in both shock and a tad bit disturbance. What, Papa? Naruto asked, innocently, as if he had done nothing wrong. How did you get in my room? Minato asked. Naruto smiled and then giggled. I walked, silly. I felt the walls of the house, then I heard your loud snoring. Naruto laughed at that last part, making Minato frown, but of course, Minato wasn't really mad, he was actually happy. He was just pretending to be mad. Oh, I snore? Well, you're gonna have to be punished for that. And with his large hands he started to tickle Naruto softly. Naruto squirmed and laughed, begging and screaming to be released from the tickle monster's hold. Minato stopped tickling Naruto and lightly planted a kiss on his forehead. Are you excited? Minato asked. Yes, Naruto answered. Okay, well, before we do anything, we're going back to bed. Minato told him. What? Why? Isn't it school time? Naruto asked, with anxiousness in his voice. I don't want to be late. Naruto, first off, it's 3 in the morning. Minato groaned tiredly. Oh, well, can I sleep here? Please Toussaint? Naruto asked. Minato, could he say no to a face like that? Naruto gulped, holding his Toussaint's hand. They were finally here at the academy and Minato told Naruto to wait while he talked to someone important. Naruto was getting a bit bored. He felt a bit scared too. The fresh bandages Minato had put on this morning were tightly wrapped around his head, still leaving some chunks of hair sticking out. Inaki. That boy has weird things around his head. Naruto could hear one boy say. Be quiet, Sasuke. Naruto heard another boy hiss. That's the Hokage and probably his son. Do you want something bad to happen to you if you make fun of him? No, Ni-san. Naruto felt awful. That boy who just made fun of him will get hurt because of making fun of him. He guessed that was the price to pay for being the son of the Hokage. Naruto was confused and upset, but deep down he couldn't ever admit it, but he felt a bit safe knowing that being the Hokage's son offered him a certain amount of doubt his father would intervene if someone did anything remotely mean to him. But after thinking that, Naruto felt guilty. Okay Angel, are you ready? Minato asked Naruto. Wah. Oh yeah. Naruto replied softly. Minato didn't like the sound of Naruto's voice. It sounded sad and scared. Minato guessed it was something else entirely unrelated to the academy. Minato held on to Naruto's hand as he led him to room C-2, then he planted a smile similar to the one he had last night. Hello, Iruka. Iruka yelped and dropped the chalk he had. Hokage-sama, hello. And hello to you too. Naruto-sama, Iruka greeted. Naruto gave a small, hello, then tried to hide behind his father. He knew Iruka, but he was still a bit nervous about being in a new place. He wanted to correct the man for the sama. He didn't like the formalities, but he was too shy to do so. Iruka looked at Minato then whispered. How is this going to work? He asked. Oh, don't worry. Naruto is a fast learner, Minato told him. And he and I have been working on writing, but I must warn you it's very sloppy, but he can write. Iruka nodded. I understand that, I'm just asking how will he perform justice if he can't see what to do. Just then the loud bell rang and Minato smirked. If you see any teachers or students put down my child, tell me. He whispered. Okay, Naruto, it's time for me to go, sadly. Wait, you're not staying, Toussaint? Naruto asked, his heart broken. He thought Minato would stay with him the whole day like he usually did. He thought his papa would be right by his side. Minato sighed sadly and explained that he had to be at work, and while he was working, Naruto was to stay in the school and not never. Naruto must never leave the property. But Papa. Naruto felt tears come to his eyes. He didn't want to go anymore if it meant he'd be separated from his papa. Naruto, it's just for a few hours and then I'll be back to pick you up, I promise. And with that Minato leaned down and gave Naruto a big hug and a small kiss on his head before leaving the room. He fought hard to keep himself from running back into the room and leaving with Naruto. He knew Naruto had to be in the academy, there was no doubt about it anymore. Minato sighed, he hoped and prayed nothing bad would happen to his baby. Naruto's morning had gone fairly smooth. Iruka gave his a seat next to a boy his age. Sasuke, this is Naruto-sama. He's going to be your partner for the seating arrangement from now on. Alright? Iruka said, guiding Naruto to the empty table next to the small child. Yes, sir, the small raven nodded. He was at first a bit scared he was being seated next to the boy he made fun of earlier, but he had hoped the blind boy wouldn't notice. It seemed Naruto didn't. Sasuke smiled at Naruto. Hi, I'm Sasuke, he offered. Hello. Naruto mumbled. He was a bit nervous around Sasuke, as he didn't have any friends except his godfather, his papa, Tsunade his doctor, and Kakashi. Those were the only people that revolved around in his small world. They were the only people he knew. He also wanted Sasuke to like him. It would be nice to have a friend his own age. May I ask why you have bandages wrapped around your head? Sasuke asked. Well, Naruto began. I can't see. It's how I was born. Oh, I'm sorry. Sasuke answered. But my Toussaint said I'll be able to use chakra, Naruto told him. I think you mean chakra, Sasuke corrected. Yeah that, Naruto said. Iruka began passing out papers that they were to write on. When he came to Naruto, He gulped and laid down his paper. Naruto, try your best. Iruka told him. Naruto nodded. He liked Iruka as a teacher. Iruka never judged him, nor did he tell Naruto to stop doing what he was doing. Naruto liked writing, although Iruka had a tough time trying to read what Naruto wrote. Sasuke, fortunately, was there to help him. Sasuke also didn't mind reading to Naruto when they had to work in their workbooks or read their assigned books. Sasuke and Naruto became really fast friends. Naruto loved Sasuke's company. He felt equal and as if his blindness didn't matter in their relationship. Close to the end of the day, their class was able to go outside and play. Sasuke guided Naruto safely out of the building. Come with me, Naruto-sama. I have some friends I'd like you to meet, Sasuke told him. He has other friends? Naruto asked himself. Sasuke could probably guess the look of Naruto's face that he was either uneasy about this or he was upset knowing he had other friends. Sasuke giggled. Don't worry, I'm showing you my friends, so they can be your friends too, he reassured the blonde. Oh, in that case show me your friends, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun? Sasuke asked. What's that? Your nickname. You can call me Sama is too formal for me, Naruto told him. Sasuke smiled, feeling honored actually that Naruto gave him permission. Okay, Naru-kun. Minato sighed, staring at the clock. It was only 2:30. Naruto wouldn't be out of school until 4. He felt so lonely. Granted, he was happy to be back at work where he could accomplish a ton of much-needed work, but he felt hollow inside. He missed his baby. He missed him so much. Then an idea came into his head. Since he is the Hokage. A smile came across his face and he cancelled a few meetings so he would have the time to leave early and pick up Naruto at 3:30, half an hour earlier than he was supposed to. He figured this would be a nice thing for Naruto and maybe they'd get ramen after that. Minato later tonight would be glad he did this. He couldn't imagine what would have happened if he didn't. This is Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Rock Lee, but we just call him Lee, Ino, and Sakura. Sasuke was done listing the names of his friends to Naruto. Everyone, this is Naruto. He can't see, but that makes him no different. And he doesn't have any friends. So I figured he could be with us, Sasuke told the group. Fine by me, Shikamaru answered lazily. We were about to play ball. Want to play, Naruto? Yeah, we're short one player, Kiba grinned. Naruto smiled big. They wanted to play with him. He was so happy he had friends now. Naruto smiled and giggled along with everyone else as they all threw the ball in the air. Of course Naruto never caught the ball, but he had tried. Sasuke, Neji and Lee had tried to teach him how to throw properly. In the end Naruto wound up flopping it around, but no one minded. Wow. All that running. Gave me an appetite, Shikamaru somewhat whined. You just ate, Neji pointed out. It was true. Their class did just have lunch. But I'm hungry again, I know. There's a new candy store just down the street where I live. We can go there and get something sweet to eat. Shikamaru was so confident in his plan. Neji, Sasuke, Lee and Kiba weren't. Sasuke looked behind him. Naruto was still playing ball with the girls, Ino and Sakura. I don't know if that's a good idea, Sasuke said. We're not allowed to leave, remember? Maybe next time, Shikamaru said. Maybe, Sasuke answered. The unsure feeling still was in his stomach, but he brushed it off and ran back to Naruto and the other girls to play ball. Then he realized something. What if Naruto wanted to go? All he wanted was to make his friend happy. He sighed and walked slowly up to Naruto. Naruto? He asked. Naruto looked around, clueless. Yes? He asked. Sasuke, is that you? Naruto began reaching out his arms and hands to feel if anyone was there. Sasuke reached out and clasped his hands with Naruto's. Then he lightly smiled. Yes, Naru-kun, it's me. Hey, if you don't want to, that's fine, but do you want to come with Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Lee, and myself to the candy store? Sasuke asked. It's okay if you don't want to. Naruto smiled. He loved candy. Okay, I want to go, he giggled. But I don't have any money. Shikamaru said he had enough. So, do you want to? Sasuke asked again. Naruto nodded. Sorry, I had to go, he told Ino and Sakura. Sakura looked betrayed. But you're playing with us. She cried. I'll play another time. Right now I'm going with Sasuke to get candy at the store, Naruto explained. But Sakura was running away from Naruto, broken-hearted that her new friend didn't want to play with her. Holding Sasuke's hand and nodding, he followed Sasuke. Sasuke approached Kiba, Neji, Shika and Lee. "Okay, we're going," Sasuke nodded. "Alright, candy store." Lee smiled. "Man, I'm going to eat a whole lot." Kiba smiled. "I still think this is a bad idea." Neji spoke as the children started hopping the fence and running through the wooded area. The children, including Naruto, never felt such a thrill. They could get caught at any given moment, but they still continued to move closer and closer to the candy store. "Aw man, I can almost taste that peppermint chocolatey goodness." Kiba nearly howled. "I don't have much, but I should be able to buy some sugar cane sticks. Or maybe some fudge bars for all of us," Shikamaru smiled. "Thank you, Shikamaru." All the boys smiled. If they knew how much trouble they'd all be in, they would turn back for sure. Minato opened the door and was a tad bit upset that the classroom was empty. -1 teacher writing on the large black board. "Oh, Hokage-sama, what are you doing here?" Iruka smiled. "Well, I decided I couldn't part with Naruto anymore, I miss him." "Has he missed me, Iruka?" Minato asked. He could just see Naruto asking almost every 2 seconds if his papa was coming to bring him home or not. Iruka smiled and shook his head. "I'm afraid not, but I think he enjoyed school. Though it was a bit hard to read his writing. Like you warned. That's why I wanted you as his teacher." Minato smiled sadly. "I knew you wouldn't discriminate him for his disability." The last thing Minato needed was an upset Naruto crying because the teacher didn't approve of him. "Never. I would never have something like that happen to Naruto. I promise, Hokage-sama," Iruka reassured him. Minato smiled back and looked around the empty classroom. "So, where is your class? Out having fun?" He smiled and looked out the window, spotting children playing outside. "Yes, it's recess. Of course, the older children must be in the village. You know our policy, from 6 to 10 they're not allowed off campus," Iruka told him. "I assume that you want to pick up Naruto early?" "Yes, I would like to, if he won't miss anything important," Minato answered. "Not at all. We were just going to review." Minato smiled and nodded his head. "Well, he should be outside with the others. Let me help you find him." "Oh, and I think he's made a friend," Iruka replied as the two walked down the hallway. "Oh, who?" Minato asked, curiously. If Naruto had a friend, he wanted to know who it was. "Sasuke Uchiha. He reminds me of you. He's very protective of Naruto. He liked to read to Naruto when we had reading time. And he doesn't mind holding his hand to guide him places. If you ask me, I think he'll be rather sad when that stops when we teach the children to control their chakra." Iruka and Minato laughed at that. Iruka opened the doors that led outside, where children from ages of 6 to 9 years old were running around, playing, or standing around talking to their friends, or even moping with the knowledge that they couldn't leave. Mostly the 9-year-olds did that. Minato scanned the playground for his son, but frowned when he didn't sense him. "So, where's my son?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe he's in the field," Iruka suggested, a bit uneasy by the frightened look Minato gave off. Naruto wasn't there either. Iruka noticed Sasuke wasn't either. Were they in the bathroom? He thought. Minato got a bit panicky when Iruka and he checked the bathrooms to find no one was in there. Iruka jogged up to Minato, who was looking everywhere. "Now, calm down. There's no need to." "To what, Iruka? Where's my son?" Minato yelled. "Well, sensei." A call came. Iruka turned and saw a little pink-haired girl running to him with tears in her eyes. Iruka crouched down and asked her what was wrong. I wanted to play with Naruto more. But he said he didn't want to," she bawled. Ino crossed her arms and had a mean look on her face. "He's so rude." Minato looked at the little blonde-haired girl. "Do you know where Naruto went?" he asked, panicking. "He said he was going with Sasuke, Kiba, Shikamaru, Lee and Neji to the new candy store. He didn't even invite us." She pouted. "What?" Minato yelled. "Candy." Naruto softly smiled. Though he couldn't see anything, he sure could smell the wonderful shop. He smelled the fresh cocoa powder and cinnamon. Then a strong scent of glazed sweet bread and donuts came his way. Sasuke and the rest of the children almost had to cover their mouths from drooling. Shikamaru and Lee took a liking to the pumpkin bread that was freshly being put on the shelves, while Neji, Kiba, Sasuke and Naruto all went and focused on the peppermints. There were all sorts of colors. A few were different flavors even. Man, I want them AAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA Shikamaru buy something so we can share? I have a bad feeling, Neji commented, feeling very uneasy about all of this. Sasuke nodded, agreeing. Can you keep an eye on Naruto while I get the lazy bum? Sure, Neji answered. Neji turned his attention to the small blonde boy with bandages. His hands were pressed against the glass and he took a big inhale. Strawberry. I'm either by the pink or red ones, he guessed. Neji was astonished. How did you know? He asked. Oh, my two-san used fruit to teach me colors. Like blue for blueberries or red for strawberries, though sometimes he used cherries. The only problem with it was after our lesson I usually got a tummy ache. Naruto laughed, remembering how much his papa panicked when he heard Naruto moan in discomfort over a stomach ache. Neji smiled. Also, my sense in smell is powerful. Kashi was surprised by how I could smell ramen a mile away. Naruto said that sentence with such pride and contentment. Sasuke hurried his pace over to Shikamaru. He was holding 10 sweet rice balls while Lee kept picking them out of the shelf. Hurry, we have to go back, Sasuke insisted. He knew they didn't have much time before someone would notice they had left the academy. In a minute, Shikamaru yelled back. Meanwhile, Kiba started darting for some fresh peanut butter cookies that Neji had to run after him to stop him for possibly stealing. But Naruto didn't notice, he was too busy smelling the sweet stuff. He kept on smelling until he walked right out the door someone held open for him thinking he wanted to leave. He kept on smelling something sweet, as heating up walking down the sidewalk. Sasuke felt uneasy being in the store. Surely the adults would wonder why all these kids were here. They were drawing too much attention to themselves. Speaking of adults, the worker at the store, a rather tall blonde-haired blue-eyed girl, had watched the boys rather closely. When Shikamaru went to the counter with a handful of sweet rice balls, she questioned them. Where are your parents? She asked him. I dunno, probably work, he replied in a smart aleck tone. She crossed her arms. And where are you five supposed to be? Don't you have school or something you should be at? She continued to question. Kiba, Shikamaru, Neji, Sasuke and Lee looked at each other in question. 5? Lee asked. Where is Naruto? The boys all looked at each other in horror, then Sasuke darted out the door. Minato was not happy. He was furious, upset, and worried. Very, very worried. His Naruto, his baby, ditched school with his friends to go to a candy store? Minato grit his teeth together while tree-hopping to the part of the village where it was more crowded. Iruka was not far behind, along with some Anbu officers, just in case, following Minato. Iruka in his years of either volunteering at the academy had never heard or experienced something like this. 6-year-olds leaving school. He usually had to deal with the 9-year-olds doing this, but the 6-year-olds? That was something new. Naruto, Minato called out. Then closing his eyes to concentrate he tried to pick up on any chakra senses. He found them, not far away, but they were scattering. Why? He wondered. Then he figured it out. He figured they must have gotten split up somehow. He couldn't have been more right. Sasuke was with Shikamaru while Lee and Neji with Kiba. All looking for the small blonde boy. Naru-kun, Sasuke called out. How could they find Naruto with all these people? He wondered. He started to worry. He just lost his best friend. Now he knew he wasn't a good friend anymore if he lost him. Sasuke started running down the sidewalk, thinking that might help him find Naruto faster. 10 minutes went by and still no Naruto. Sasuke. Maybe we should go back to school. Maybe he went there, Shikamaru suggested. Just a little longer, please, Sasuke practically begged. I have to find him. Minato told Iruka to search for Shikamaru, Neji, Lee, Sasuke and Kiba while he searched for his son. Jumping down from the tree without waiting for an answer, he started running down a street, rounding a corner when he bashed into someone, making him fall to his butt on the concrete. Hokage-sama? Sasuke shrieked. Who are you, Sasuke? Is that you? Minato asked in a panicky voice. Where's Naruto? Sasuke hesitated. I dunno. He added that last part quickly, then very fast he jumped over Minato and started running, Shikamaru following close behind him. Hey, come back here, Minato screamed. Naruto didn't smell the sweet smell anymore, which made him upset and a tad bit scared. Where were his friends? Where was he? He began to tremble, but he didn't notice was starting to get dark and little cold, since summer was long over by now. Since they had recess later in the day and school was almost over, Naruto found himself in quite the predicament. "Oh, I'm lost," he nearly cried. "San, he'll be so mad." Naruto began to cry and figured that if he walked back where he came, then he'd find his friends again. But what he didn't notice was he was about to walk right into the street. Of course the street was empty except a few people crossing it or children running and playing. As Naruto stepped off the curb, he tripped and fell on his face, scraping himself badly in the process, which really set the little boy crying. "Naruto!" Someone screamed. The next thing the boy knew, he was being picked up and held closely by a warm body. "T2-san? Is that you?" Naruto asked, feeling both relieved that his father found but also scared at the same time. Minato held Naruto closer to his body, squeezing the daylights out of him. "Oh Naruto. My baby, are you all right?" Minato asked with concern, checking the injury. It was bleeding, but it didn't look too bad. Kyuubi would no doubt heal it soon. But still, why did you leave school? Minato demanded, putting Naruto on the ground. Naruto was speechless. He had no idea what to tell his T2-san. A lie, that's what he needed. I was taken, T2-san. Off the school grounds, Naruto lied. The man who took me said he wanted to give me and my friend some candy. And I followed him. Followed him? You said you were taken, Minato questioned, knowing Naruto was lying. He was especially angry at the fact he was lying because he told Naruto to never lie. "Naruto, remember what I said about lying?" Minato asked. Naruto swallowed hard and slowly nodded. "I don't want to hear a word out of you, Naruto. We're going home," Minato continued, roughly grabbing Naruto's hand to take him home. But Naruto tried to speak. "Not a word, Naruto." Minato yelled. He didn't mean to yell. He just felt so scared about Naruto being lost and angry that Naruto would have the nerve to lie to him about it. Naruto felt his bottom lip quiver and he bit it, as to not blurt out crying. But that didn't stop the tears from soaking his bandages. Naruto silently sobbed the whole way back, while Minato's anger and frustration rose. Minato tried to decide whether Naruto should really be punished. But then again, he lied and ran off school property. But Minato hated to lay a hand on his baby. It made him feel like such a horrible parent. But Naruto needed to be punished. There was no exception. When the two arrived home, Naruto's bandages had to be taken off because of their soaking wet condition. When Minato did remove them, he noticed Naruto's eyes were both a mix of pale blue and a red irritation around his eyes had formed due to his crying. "Naruto, stay here and wait for me," Minato spoke. There was no happiness in his voice. Instead, it was that tone that Naruto knew well. It was the tone of voice his papa used just before he was going to be punished. Naruto started to shake in his spot on the floor. In only just a matter of seconds, his papa was going to come in here and give him his medicine. Then after that he'll get. Naruto gulped. "I don't wanna get smacked," he said to himself. Naruto had only been smacked twice in his life. One was when he was 4 and he purposely knocked over his cup of water that held his medicine. The other time was when he called Tsunade a bad word at the doctor's office and Minato really gave it to him that time. Now he was going to get smacked again. Naruto started to cry once more. He really didn't want to get smacked. Minato came back with medicine and fresh bandages when he noticed his son crying again. Minato hadn't expected Naruto not to cry, but you'd think he'd run out of tears by now. "Naruto," Minato softly spoke, feeling much calmer than before, and sat next to Naruto. But Naruto thought he was going to get spanked and he immediately ran away from Minato to the opposite side of the room. Minato felt his heart crush. Why did Naruto run away from him? Minato was close to tears himself. "Naruto, please don't run away," Minato slowly talked to him. Naruto shook his head and ran anyway. Minato had no choice but to run after him. Naruto was fast, but being blind does have its disadvantages. Naruto ran into one of the sliding doors and broke it. The crash was a slight impact. It caused small scratches and a big bruise. Naruto sat on the ground, covering his now bloody forehead crying. "Naruto, what's happened?" Minato asked, voice of concern. "Oh, damn." He picked up the crying 6-year-old and taking him to the bathroom, sat him down on the counter to apply some ointment and band-aid. His other cut had already healed by now, Thanks for Kyuubi, and this would too. But Minato always played things on the safe side. Naruto. Now will you listen to me when I say not to run away? Minato scolded. You could get hurt. Naruto wiped a tear away from his eyes. Trust now sinking in back to his papa. Minato sighed. Naruto. I'm not going to spank you. I just want to talk. Talk? Naruto asked. He couldn't understand how talking was a punishment. Naruto listened closely. This would be interesting. Natuto. I make rules to keep you safe. Not to take away your fun or make you miserable. I make rules to ensure you and myself that you will be fine. And when you break them, not only will you get hurt but punished as well. Minato explained. Do you understand? Naruto shook his head, understanding more than enough. Minato sighed. But something was bugging him. What happened to his friends? Papa? Naruto began. What will happen to my friends? Minato had to smile on that. Naruto seemed to be very worried about them. Minato loved how Naruto cared so much about his friends, and it seemed to him that his friends were very worried about him. Naruto, I don't know what will happen to them. I'm sure they are in trouble, just like you, young man. Minato spoke. He helped Naruto off the counter and brought him to the dinner table where they ate silently. After dinner, Naruto took his pills and new bandages were freshly wrapped tightly around his little head. Minato shooed him off to bed early, trying himself to let this all sink in. Of course, Naruto complained to having to be put to bed so early. Minato himself was curious as to what was happening to Naruto's friends, especially Sasuke. Meanwhile, Uchiha residence. What was going through your head when you did that stunt? Fugaku screamed, his face turning a light pink as he continued to yell at his youngest son. Ambu officers were to help find you and your friends, after they heard that the Hokage's son was involved with the group of kids. Everyone was looking for the Hokage's only son. He continued. Sasuke just sat there, taking it all in, trying his best not to cry. I can't show my face at work, knowing I'm the father of the son who pulled something like that. You won't be strong if you skip classes at this age. I mean it, Sasuke, if you do something like this ever again I won't hesitate to punish you, do you hear me? Sasuke nodded. Yes, father. Now go to bed. Fugaku hissed. Sasuke took that chance and ran out of his father's office. He felt horrible as to what he did. He knew he should have never gone, or took Naruto with him. It wouldn't have been that bad if he left Naruto, at least he wouldn't be in danger, but he was. After he ran into the Hokage started chasing him and Shikamaru. But they managed to ditch him, only to run into Iruka, who brought them back to the academy where along with Neji, Lee and Kiba waited for their parents to be called. Sasuke thought his father looked scary when he yelled at Itachi when Itachi skipped out on practice to play with him. This was nothing compared to what just happened. Sasuke ran all the way to his room, slammed the door and jumped on his bed, burying his head into his pillow and cried. Now he hates me even more. Sasuke cried. Then a horrible thought went through his head. What if Naruto hated him? And the poor child cried himself to sleep that night. Sasuke pulled out his workbook from his table and started to get ready to write in them when he heard a loud bump and a loud, "Watch where you're going," followed by a timid, "I'm so sorry." Sasuke looked up to see Naruto trying to find his desk. He sighed and walked over to Naruto. "Naru-kun, it's me." Sasuke spoke. Naruto looked up. "Sasuke-kun, is that you?" he asked. Sasuke smiled. He held out his hands, which Naruto took a hold of, and he helped him to his desk. He watched Naruto pull out his workbook and textbook, then his pencils. Naruto tried to figure out what he was supposed to do when Sasuke offered something. "Would you like me to read to you, again?" Sasuke asked. "Oh, yes please." Naruto smiled. "Okay. One ninja worked for 8 hours, trained for 3 and walked again for 10. How many hours did he work?" Sasuke read the question out loud. Naruto thought for a moment, then he started counting on his fingers. "He worked 18 hours, because the practice hours are optional and not actually working." Naruto smiled. Sasuke nodded and smiled. "That's right. That's how their morning went." As Sasuke helped his friend, the question, "Does he hate me?" was completely forgotten. Of course Naruto didn't hate him. It was blandly obvious that Naruto did not hate him. Sasuke smiled, just thanking God that Naruto and himself were still friends. Iruka was cleaning off the chalkboard when he looked at the clock. It was 5 minutes before the children would leave for the day. That gave him plenty of time to discuss his plans. Alright class, as you all know that at the end of this month summer will end, but at the end of each summer there is a summer festival to celebrate and remember honorable ninjas. Iruka smiled. And as a class project, I've assigned a project each of you will do. He started to pass out papers when he came to Naruto. Sasuke started silently reading the paper to Naruto. Iruka smiled, making note to give Sasuke a good grade today for going out of his way to help his friend. So, we're supposed to make masks? Naruto asked. Sasuke nodded. Yup, the masks symbolize what characteristics best describe yourself. Naruto wondered to himself while waiting for his papa to pick him up from school. What mask should he make? But then again, would he be able to wear it because of his bandages? He sighed and sat silently while waiting for Minato to pick him up. Naruto, keep your scarf on, you'll catch a cold. Minato scolded while bending down to wrap the red scarf around his small child. Naruto groaned and let his Two-san wrap it twice around his little neck. Papa, I'm not cold, Naruto insisted. It's 40 degrees outside, Naruto. It's pretty chilly. Minato ignored his son's statement. I don't want you getting sick. I can't have a sick little baby, can I? Minato teased him and then pinched his cheek. Naruto swatted his hand away. Not a baby, he mumbled. Minato couldn't help but chuckle at that. Naruto was just too cute dressed in his little orange coat with his red scarf and yellow mittens. He looked cute as a button. Minato himself threw on his black peacoat and started putting on his scarf. It was chillier this season. It was nearing the end of September, the nights became colder and the days didn't get that warm. Minato picked up Naruto and they started walking out of the house. Where are we going, Two-san? Naruto asked. Minato looked up at Naruto, then he hesitated. How could he tell Naruto he was going to another doctor's appointment? He shivered at the last memory. Then he told himself, Naruto had to get used to these visits at least until he could learn how to use his chakra. Kit, you're going someplace you won't like. Naruto drew his attention to the voice that spoke to him. Why do you say that? He asked the voice. Minato stopped walking and looked at Naruto. I didn't say anything, Naru-chan, Minato spoke. No, not you, Naruto answered. Minato was a bit worried now. Naruto, who are you talking to? Minato asked. His voice full of concern and worry. He had hoped that it wasn't the fox Naruto was talking to. It better not be that fox. Minato gave off an angry look, but Naruto must have sensed something was wrong. No one, just myself, Papa, Naruto lied. He thought his papa would be mad if he found out whom he was talking to. But then again, if he explained to his father that it was a friend he was talking to, would he be mad then? Naruto wondered. No, he'd go into an overprotective mood. Naruto felt glum. He sighed sadly to cheer him up. Minato placed him on his shoulders. It seemed to work. Naruto sniffed the air. It smelled strange and yucky. He knew that smell. No, I don't want to go, Naruto yelled, trying to jump off of Minato's shoulders. Minato kept a firm hold of Naruto as to not drop him, his heart racing every time Naruto went to leap out of his arms. Naruto, it's just a checkup, Minato informed him. That's what you said, last time. Naruto cried. And it hurt. He stuck out his bottom lip and Minato sighed, feeling more than guilty for Naruto's pain. Kit, I think I can stop the pain when it comes. The voice spoke again. You can? Naruto asked out loud, confusing his father. You'll have to trust me with this. Just let your idiot of a father take you inside, and once the bitchy doctor puts on the cream I can stop it from burning. My papa isn't an idiot and bitchy is a bad word, Naruto yelled. Then he stopped and realized he was talking out loud again. He gulped. Naruto? Minato asked. What was that? And nothing, let's just go inside, Naruto answered, and with that, he took his red scarf and wrapped it around his face, not wanting to talk anymore. Minato started to panic. It was true. His son was talking to that damn fox. Minato grit his teeth but then realized there's nothing he could do. But what if what Kyuubi was telling Naruto wasn't actually that harmful? No way was he going to risk that chance, though. Well, don't say bitchy, that's a naughty word, Naru-chan. Yes, Papa. XCX. Tsunade looked at Minato, who nodded while keeping a tight hold on Naruto. Tsunade came closer to the bandage-less Naruto, ready to apply the cream on Naruto's eyes. Minato felt something bad was going to happen, but Naruto wasn't fidgeting or screaming. In fact, he stayed put and waited patiently for the cream to be applied. Both strange and a good sign for progress. Okay, Kit, tell me when and I'll make your face numb so you won't feel a thing. Naruto nodded. Tsunade started applying it on the cotton ball, and when she came close to Naruto with the cream, Naruto screamed. Now, startling both Minato and Tsunade, but the fox took this as the sign and Naruto's face felt a bit tingly and he giggled at the new feeling. Tsunade stared at Naruto, wondering what he was talking about. Then Naruto spoke. You can apply it now. He spoke softly, feeling a bit embarrassed. Tsunade did just that and Naruto didn't scream, try to wiggle away or even cry. He just sat there in his father's lap. Minato was shocked and both utterly happy when new bandages were tied around Naruto's eyes. Good job, Naruto. I'm proud of you. Minato smiled, cuddling into his son. Naruto smiled and returned the cuddle. Thank you, Kyuubi. Naruto whispered softly. You're welcome, Kit. Minato watched Naruto slowly eat away at his ramen he earned for not throwing a fit at the doctors. He stared long and hard at Naruto. Minato knew that Naruto knew of the fox. What Minato wanted to know was what was that fox telling his son. Naruto looked up from his bowl and smiled. Are you okay, Papa? Naruto asked. I'm fine, baby. Minato smiled and rubbed his hand against Naruto's small hand. Naruto shrugged and went back to his hot ramen. When the two arrived home, Naruto went to work planning his mask for his project at school. He wanted his mask to be really cool looking, but he had no idea how to start on it. He groaned and felt hopeless. Need help, Kit? The kind fox asked. Kyuubi, I don't think Papa likes you, Naruto spoke, off-task forgetting about his mask. Of course he doesn't, Kyuubi answered. Now, about your mask, what do you like? Like any specific animal? Naruto thought for a moment. Then he smiled. I like foxes. Kashi brought me a stuffed fox. I like it, it's soft and plushy. Naruto smiled. Kyuubi smirked from his cage deep in Naruto. Very well, let me control your hands, Kit. Kyuubi commanded. Naruto didn't know what to do with that, so he just held out his hands. And he was shocked to see his hands were moving. And what Naruto found to be freaky was he wasn't doing anything. Kyuubi used his chakra to control Naruto's hands, grabbing the paintbrush that had orange paint, glitter and glue. When he was done, Kyuubi stopped his chakra flow to Naruto's hands and Naruto felt his hands go limp. Kyuubi? Naruto asked. Is it finished? The fox didn't answer. Naruto picked up the mask, smiling. Kyuubi must have finished, he thought. I want to show Papa. Naruto walked out of his room, and let one of his hands run along the wall of the house. Counting his steps to where his Papa's office was, he knew his Papa would be working in there. Naruto came to a door and knocked on it. You may come in, Naruto. Minato sounded happy. Naruto smiled and opened the door. Papa, I finished my mask. Naruto smiled brightly and went to place it on his father's desk. But the mask was placed at the very corner of the desk and was about to fall, but Minato caught it in time. He looked at the mask and was amazed. It was so colorfully detailed, the orange was so vibrant and bright. But what Minato noticed was it looked like a fox. It looked like that damn fox he sealed into Naruto 6 years ago. Naru-chan, I'm so happy that you were able to make this mask, but honey I don't think you should wear it, Minato confessed. Naruto felt confused and heartbroken. Why Papa? Naruto asked. Well, you see the fox that you painted on this mask looks identical to the fox that harmed our village 6 years ago. It might offend people, Minato told him. He hated to see Naruto pout and he didn't want to discriminate his son's artwork, but this was just too close to what the Nine Tails looked like. Naruto, tell me the truth. Did you have help making this mask? Minato asked. I want the truth, Naruto. Naruto bit his bottom lip, then holding his pointer finger to Minato. 1 minute. Then he turned around. Minato raised one eyebrow. What was his son doing? Kyuubi, should I tell Papa about you? Naruto asked himself. Minato became very worried. Then Naruto turned around. He says you already know him. Naruto slapped himself mentally. Of course I know him. I just want to know what the hell he's trying to belittle my child into. Well, yes and no Naruto. Is it possible that I speak to Kyuubi? Minato picked up Naruto and set him on the couch and sat next to him. Naruto shrugged. Kyuubi, Papa wants to talk to you. Naruto whispered. Minato began to get a bit worried. He wanted to take Naruto into his arms and tell him to stop. But Naruto's bandages started to unwrap on their own and Naruto opened his eyes and Minato saw the bloody red color of the demon Kyuubi. "What do you want?" Kyuubi spoke. Minato gulped and frowned. "What are you telling my son? And I swear if you're lying to him," he spoke dangerously. "Relax, you overprotective human. I haven't said much." Kyuubi made Naruto smile an eerie smile. "What you should be concerned about is how lonely that boy is." And with that, Kyuubi must have left Naruto because Naruto's eyes were not a blood red, but back to the pale blue color. Naruto smiled. "Did you talk to him, Papa?" Naruto asked. Minato bit his bottom lip and sighed. "It's dinner time, Naru-chan. Would you like to help me?" Minato asked, seeing Naruto look excited. He nodded and Minato led Naruto to the kitchen. Of course Naruto wasn't allowed to touch the knives, but Minato this one time let Naruto use the knife to cut up the small bits of vegetables. Of course he was watched closely, that would go into their dinner. After their supper, Minato helped Naruto with his mask, making a new one. It wasn't anything like what Kyuubi helped with, which saddened Naruto a bit more. Instead it was a pale green with a frog look. "There, much better," Minato said, placing the mask over Naruto, then he grinned. "Oh, you're just so cute. I need a picture." Minato started looking through his desk until he found the camera and snapped a few pictures of Naruto's frog mask. When Naruto next went back to school, was the day the masks were due. Naruto sighed and turned his in. Iruka smiled. "Ah, Naruto, it's so cute." Iruka grinned. "I don't want cute, I want cool." Naruto silently sighed to himself. Other children smiled and giggled looking at everyone else's masks. Sasuke was kind and handed Naruto his mask. Naruto felt the glue stains and fluffy substance. "What is it, Sasuke?" Naruto asked. "A panda." Sasuke smiled. "Itachi helped me." "I didn't see your mask, Naruto. Which animal did you choose?" "I originally had a fox, but Two-san said I couldn't have the fox, so he helped me make a frog," Naruto replied glumly. Sasuke sadly smiled, then placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder in a comforting way. "It's still a very nice mask," Sasuke told him kindly. Naruto shrugged. He hadn't been feeling that great all day. Even at recess, he just sat sadly on a swing while his friends all watched him. Sasuke was concerned. Naruto was usually a happy, talkative kid. Not this sad person. Later that night, lanterns were hung and lit, fireworks were blasting. Adults and children were wearing their best kimonos, while their children also wore their masks. Some old, some new, but all creative. Naruto sighed, while holding his Two-san's hand. Minato looked down and was worried. Tonight he should be having fun, not sulking. "Naruto, is something the matter? Do your eyes hurt?" Minato asked, already checking Naruto's eyes under his bandages. "I'm fine," he replied, quietly. Minato smiled a small smile and continued to wrap the bandages back. "Two-san, can I go without them, just for tonight? Please? I'll let you put new ones on when we get home, I promise," Naruto begged. Minato sighed. He wasn't supposed to let Naruto take off his bandages, the cream that he applied earlier that night, without a fidgeting or crying Naruto, which more than pleased him, would dry out if the bandages weren't on. Not only that, but he felt safer knowing Naruto had bandages. "Naruto, you know the answer. Please? It'll be just 2 hours. I promise to be extra careful," Naruto begged. "Plus, I'll look like a dork with my bandages on and my mask. Please?" Naruto let out his lower lip as to add more to his pleading. Minato sighed and started to slowly unwrap the bandages. "Alright, just this one time. I want you to have new ones on, so come to me in no less than 2 hours so I can put new ones on," Minato told him firmly. "Yay." Naruto smiled. Once his bandages were off, he opened his eyes to show his pale, lifeless eyes. Minato smiled and playfully put Naruto's mask on. Obviously, he unpurposely put it on upside down as to be funny. Naruto only giggled and put it on right. Minato handed Naruto his plastic black children's lantern that changed colors and held on to his son's hand once more. Minato was greeted both formally and professionally, as was Naruto, as the two walked into the village. Naruto smelled new smells and could hear new sounds. For one night the weather was warm and Minato was glad he didn't have to pester Naruto about wearing any extra articles of clothing. Minato and Naruto walked some more until Minato stopped. Something was wrong. He narrowed his eyes and started looking around. Everyone was having fun and everything was perfect, but something was wrong. He picked Naruto up off the ground and carried him the rest of the way, much to Naruto's protests. Lurking in the shadows among the mist of the forest, a snake-like lover slithered in his silver snake form. He came closer and closer to the village. He smiled. "Ah, it seems the party has started without me." He smiled. Deep down, his anger only arose. Then something caught his attention. He had spotted the fourth Hokage. He seemed to be with a little boy, taking off some bandages that were wrapped tightly around his head. The snake hissed, causing the fourth to stop walking. The snake was ready to fight if he was spotted. He grinned when he noticed the retarded older blonde hadn't spotted him, but Orochimaru wasn't about to let his guard down. He slithered along the tall grass, coming closer to the village. If I just get close enough to the fox child and take him, then I'd have the true power of the Kyuubi. Minato watched Naruto closely. It would be half an hour before he and the third gave their speeches. Naruto was currently with Sasuke and Itachi inside the Hokage tower. Sasuke was given permission to be with Naruto as long as Itachi was with him to watch him and make sure he didn't run off like what happened at the academy. Minato watched Itachi light sparklers while Naruto and Sasuke twirled them around. Naruto didn't exactly know what a sparkler was, so of course he didn't realize that it would be so hot when he reached out to touch it. When he did, he screamed in pain and dropped his sparkler on the floor. Minato was there in a flash. "Naruto. What happened?" he asked. "He touched the sparkler." Sasuke replied. "Oh, Naruto. You can't touch things like that. You'll hurt yourself." Minato replied, placing Naruto's hands under the sink of cold running water in the attached bathroom. Naruto sniffed. That feeling, he never felt it before. It was hot, hotter than anything he ever felt. "Okay, Papa," he whimpered. Minato sadly smiled and placed a kiss on Naruto's cheek. "Feel better?" he asked. "Yes," the fox carrier answered. Minato safely helped Itachi light more sparklers for Sasuke and Naruto, and this time Minato kept his eyes on Naruto while he played with his sparkler. When the time came, he told Naruto to wait in his office while he went to make his speech. He knew how bored Naruto would become during his speech, so he figured he'd leave him in his office where some of his toys were. Itachi and Sasuke, however, were to go back to their parents. Sasuke gave a small goodbye to his friend, which Naruto replied softly back. Minato started putting away a few items when Kakashi walked in with the third. "Are you ready, Yondaime?" the third asked with a small smile. Minato nodded. He gave Naruto a kiss on the cheek. "Stay here, Naru-chan, and when I come back, we'll play some games. Would you like that?" Minato asked. Naruto shrugged. Before Minato left, he whispered to Kakashi, "Watch him. Make sure nothing happens, okay, Kakashi?" Minato told him, "Obviously I will, since I don't have a death wish if anything should happen to him." Kakashi meant to be funny, but Minato took this as an insult and he grabbed the new orange book that belonged to Kakashi. Kakashi was heartbroken. He hadn't finished reading that. "Your punishment," Minato replied, coolly. "Now, watch my little boy, or I'll burn it." Kakashi gulped, knowing the overprotective father was serious. He turned his attention to Naruto, who looked up knowing someone was in front of him. He smiled. "Hello, Kosh," he spoke in the most adorable voice. Kakashi smiled his eye in a U shape. "Hello, Naruto." The third and fourth had left to do their speeches. All were unaware of the snake slithering deeper into the village. Orochimaru was still in snake form when he reached the walls of the Hokage tower. He quickly slithered into a bush once he heard vibrations. He narrowed his yellow eyes when he saw the fourth and third walking silently. Anbu members were stationed far, but close enough in case of an attack. But he wasn't interested in them. Well, he was, but not at this particular moment. Instead, he was interested in the fox carrier. Just a little bit closer, Orochimaru smiled, as he slowly and quietly slithered under the door entering the tower. Kakashi was moping. Don't get him wrong, he loved to watch Naruto and was always happy when he did. He loved Naruto. Naruto was a parent's dream and a babysitter's easy A, but he also loved his literature. He had just bought that book too. And Minato told him that if he hadn't done a good job, then he'd burn it. Well, not in those exact words, but Kakashi knew he was screwed if Naruto even got a splinter. But Kakashi was a bit curious on this job. Naruto would usually be bouncing off the walls and happy today, but now he was quiet. Naruto, are you okay? Kakashi asked. Not really, Naruto answered, truthfully. Well, what's the matter? Maybe I can help? As Kakashi spoke those words and Naruto's head snapped up, getting an idea. Naruto smiled mischievously. I left my mask at home. Can you go get it? Naruto asked politely. Kakashi wanted his book back badly. But he knew he couldn't leave Naruto. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't. Naruto started crying. Kakashi got worried. Why was he crying? But then he realized he wasn't really crying. Naruto, stop, Kakashi begged. Not until you get my mask at home. Naruto yelled back. Naruto, your dad will kill me if he finds out I left you alone. Kakashi told him. He'll really kill you when he sees I'm crying, Naruto smiled, evilly. Then he went back to crying. Kakashi bit his bottom lip. Knowing Minato, and how paranoid he would become when it came to his son, Minato wouldn't notice the difference if Naruto was faking or not, especially when it came to tears. Kakashi plugged his ears when Naruto screamed once more. Okay. Stop, Naruto, Naruto. Naruto, shut up. Kakashi yelled, causing Naruto to be quiet. I'll get your mask, but you have to stay in this room. Naruto smiled and nodded. He really wanted his fox mask. And he intended to get it. Kakashi became nothing more than a cloud of purple smoke and Naruto happily went back to making a castle out of his toy blocks. He started humming a small song he had heard on TV when he heard a small chuckle. Huh? He asked. Kashi? No, I'm not Kakashi. That evil and sinister voice that belonged to Orochimaru spoke. I knew I should have put a camera in that room. That way, I'd know exactly what Naruto was up to. Minato told himself out loud, catching the third's attention. The third turned to Minato. What are you talking about, Yondaime? He asked. Minato and the third stopped walking. Minato let out a sigh. To tell you the truth, things have been weird, he replied. I don't have time to tell it all, but Naruto is changing. And it's all because of that damn fox. Minato grit his teeth at that last part. I'm just scared of something bad happening to Naruto. The third sighed. He was a father and a grandfather. He knew the feeling of having to worry about a child, but sometimes Minato went overboard. Mianto, your son loves you. He always will. All you need to do is remind him that you'll always be there for him, the third told him. Minato nodded, feeling a bit better. Who are you? Naruto stuttered, a bit scared now. Don't worry. I'm an Anbu and your father sent me to retrieve you. The snake spoke, obviously lying. Why? Naruto asked. His father had told him to stay here. He changed his mind and wants you to hear his speech. He has a surprise for you, Orochimaru told the boy. Alright, Naruto answered, believing the lie. Orochimaru smirked as his plan worked. He put his pale and pasty hand on Naruto's small tan hand and took the child out the back window of Minato's office. He chuckled. Too easy, he thought. Are you sure we're going the right way? The blonde asked the Anbu officer who had supposed Lycombe to fetch him to bring him to his father. Naruto became a bit worried when the officer didn't reply. Instead, he kept his mouth shut so as not to give himself away. Naruto in the meantime wondered what the surprise would be. He wondered if it was a material item or something else. Whatever it was, it sure was exciting him. He grinned and kept quiet since the Anbu he was with wasn't very talkative. But soon he realized that it was taking forever to get to his papa. He was sure his papa wasn't that far. And not to mention it was starting to get a bit colder. Naruto tightened his kimono around himself in an effort to keep warm. Although it was made of fine silk, he could still feel a cold breeze. Naruto tried not to think of the coldness. He knew his papa would keep him warm. That is if he ever arrived to see his papa. Okay, Naru-chan, I have your mask, Kakashi started, but then suddenly stopped. Naruto? He called out, hoping the child was hiding just to be playful. After 5 minutes of searching, Kakashi started to panic. Naruto was nowhere in sight, meaning if Minato came back and Naruto was still missing, not only would his life be at stake, but his book would be burning. Kakashi's eye widened, imaging himself tied to a post while a very angry chibi Minato flicked out a lighter, slowly burning each and every page of Kakashi's new book, right in front of Kakashi too. Thinking about that made Kakashi only look faster and harder. Where was Naruto? Kakashi felt a breeze. It wasn't cold in here when he left, was it? Turning around he looked in horror as he saw the window open. Racing to the window, he noticed 2 large footprints that belonged to an adult on the windowsill. Kakashi thought for a moment, no Naruto and an open window. There was only one conclusion. Naruto was kidnapped. No, my book can't perish for this. Kakashi cried, sinking to his knees. Minato ignored the constant cheers and begs for any autographs of any sort as he rushed to his office. He smiled with each step he took to his office. Of course he was blessed for having no one else in the building. What if someone had seen the Hokage running in his best kimono up the stairs? He'd never hear the end of it. He took a deep breath while in the hallway that led to his office, smiling. He walked forward, raising an eyebrow each time he saw a new article of stuff in the hallway. For instance, there were pillows, toys, and a few office supplies, not to mention to countless papers flying everywhere. They must have had fun, Minato smiled. Kashi, he sang as he entered his office, not noticing the pale and horrified look the teenager gave off. Minato was too busy grinning that stupid grin of his. Naru-chan, it's Papa. Where are you? He called out, thinking that Naruto and Kakashi must be playing a game of hide and seek. Why else would Kakashi be throwing things around? Where are you, baby? Come to Papa, Minato called, wanting to find his son. Hokage-sama, Kakashi finally spoke up. This may very well be the last thing he ever says. Sama, since when do you call me that? The frazzled father asked. Ever since I found out I was going to die. Formality today? Kakashi nervously laughed. Minato nodded and continued to look for his son. Then he shivered. Kakashi, it's cold in here. Minato turned to the window. Damn it, don't open this window, he said, slamming it shut. Naruto could catch a cold or the flu. Dear God, I can't imagine him throwing up sick. Minato then locked the window. Kakashi gulped, lifting a finger. I wouldn't do that. Kakashi told him. Why not? Minato asked. No, demanded, daring Kakashi to sass him. Because, Kakashi squeaked. Minato arched his eyebrow. While Kakashi shuddered, then he said, at a very fast rate, why Minato shouldn't have shut the window. Minato stared at Kakashi as if the silver-haired teen told him he wanted to be a burrito when he grew up. What? Minato asked. Speak slowly. Because, that's where Naruto's kidnapper escaped. Kakashi yelled once more. Minato thought for a moment, taking in what his ex-student just told him. Excuse me? He asked, making sure he heard the teen correctly. Sensei, I'm so sorry, I just left for a few minutes and when I came back he was gone. Kakashi explained. Minato froze, and then looked at his feet. I can prove it, see here? Kakashi opened the window once more, pointing to the dirty footmarks on the sill. Here are the kidnapper's feet marks, sensei? Minato wasn't looking at the window behind him, instead he still had his back to Kakashi. Kakashi became worried now. Mister, where are we going? A little frightened Naruto asked. It had felt like such a long time since he left with the man who said he'd take him to his Tucson. He was cold and it just became colder the more they traveled. Orochimaru ignored the boy. Instead he kept his grip on him as he quickly jumped from tree to tree. He needed to get closer to Kabuto. He would surely have the extraction ready by now. Naruto wondered if this was such a good idea, but then he remembered he'd be seeing his Tucson. Naruto thought of a wonderful idea. Instead of bringing him to his Tucson first, he'd have him help him find his Ka-san. Naruto figured that was the only way to surprise his Tucson, since today was his Tucson's special day of being Hokage. Naruto smiled. He'd have the man bring him and his Ka-san back home and he would bring Ka-san back to his Tucson. And his Tucson wouldn't cry anymore. Naruto sighed. He remembered something painful that he'd never forget. Flashback. Naruto couldn't sleep that night. It was too hot in his room and his Tucson insisted he'd stay under a whole bunch of blankets. Even though he kicked them off, he was still hot. And that made him grouchy because he was tired. Instead, he decided a drink of water would make him better. He felt his nightstand until he felt a glass. When he went to drink, he realized it was empty. He needed more water. So he slowly slid out of bed and walked slowly down the hallway, careful as to not wake up his Tucson. His Tucson would be mad if he found him out of bed. His Tucson said it was dangerous for him to be out walking in the dark. Like it would matter. All I see is dark, Naruto thought to himself. He tiptoed into the living room, but quickly hid behind the wall when he heard someone sobbing. He kept quiet. Kushina. Minato sobbed quietly. Naruto listened very carefully. Was his Tsusan crying? If so, why? Naruto listened closely. Kushina. Our boy's growing up, our baby. He whimpered. I miss you so much. Naruto couldn't see, but Minato was hunched over sitting on a pillow on the floor sitting in front of a picture of Kushina. Today had been Naruto's birthday and the day she died. But Minato would never hold that against Naruto. Never. But he did feel guilty about her death. She at first hadn't wanted a child. She was too scared of the birth, but Minato had pestered and bugged her for a baby, so she gave in and Minato impregnated her. She had loved and experienced the joys of pregnancy, but when the birth came, something went wrong and she ran out of strength to carry on, so it wound up being an emergency C-section. Minato had only 5 minutes to grieve her death before the Kyuubi had been unleashed. And that's a whole different story. Kushina. If only you could see him now. He smiled at the picture. Then the sound of shattered glass broke the silence of the house. Naruto? Miyanto called out, getting up and racing towards his son's room. He stopped when he noticed Naruto standing in the hallway, next to the broken glass. Naruto, what are you doing out of bed? He questioned. Naruto stepped forward and Minato picked him up, sighed in relief as Naruto hadn't stepped on the glass. Naruto, I'm bringing you back to bed. I'm thirsty. Naruto pouted. Minato rolled his eyes, now walking to the kitchen to grab his son a glass of water. When Naruto was finished with his drink he asked, Tsusan, why were you crying? Minato looked up. Oh, no reason. He lied. Do you miss mommy? Naruto asked. Minato sighed and nodded. He sat down, pulling Naruto to sit in his lap. With his hand he gently pressed Naruto's head to his chest, letting Naruto listen to his heartbeat. Then he stood up and rocked the toddler for a few minutes, hushing Naruto to slumber once more. I miss her so much, Naruto, but I'm glad I have you. He whispered. Flashback done. I'll bring Ka-san back, Tsusan. I promise, Naruto vowed. Minato had told Naruto that Ka-san was in a happy place where there was no pain or sadness, instead there was bliss and utter happiness. When Naruto asked Minato why Ka-san had to leave, Minato gave a frightened look and stuttered, ignoring Naruto's question, which led Naruto thinking that maybe he could find her. Naruto yawned. He went to ask the kind man to help him find his Ka-san, but instead he yawned and his eyes felt heavy. He fell asleep. Minato started running as fast as he could, calling more than half of the Anbu members to help him. Kakashi followed him until the gate when Minato turned and told him to go back. Wait here in the village and search for Naruto, Kakashi, Minato answered. No, I had to go with you, it was my resp. Please, if you truly want to help me, then, stay here. Minato cut him off. Kakashi looked at his sensei and saw that Minato wasn't mad at him at all. In fact, he didn't once blame him. Stay here and search the village. Maybe Naruto and that kidnapper are still here. With that, Minato patted Kakashi on the head, like he used to when he was his teacher, and ran out of Konoha. Naruto. I'm coming, Papa's coming. Orochimaru hadn't known the true power of the Kyuubi, and after what he will witness, he wished he had tried to kidnap Naruto at an earlier age. Orochimaru smiled. Kabuto was close by, with the extraction technique ready to employ. He smirked as he saw Kabuto signaling he was ready. He landed on the ground gently, still having a firm grasp on the child. Ah, the bastard child, Kabuto smirked. Now. Orochimaru smiled, his voice taunting. Let's call it properly, demon child. Naruto had fallen asleep, but the Kyuubi was wide awake and not liking what he was hearing. Kid, wake up. Naruto only stirred and kept on sleeping. He didn't feel the cold stone he was placed on, or the chains being clasped onto his ankles and wrists. All Naruto thought of was seeing his papa. Orochimaru then placed a few wristbands to tighten the grip against Naruto, just in case things got out of hand and the chains weren't enough. Orochimaru smirked, as Kabuto started a just you that started to make the ground go deeper in the earth. Even this didn't wake Naruto. Naruto had always been somewhat of a heavy sleeper. The ground had led them into some type of secretive place where machines had been hooked up and wires were dripping with ooze and other liquids. But what Orochimaru had in mind was the extraction of the 9 tails from this child. But sir, when we fully extract the 9 tails from the child, what will happen to the child? Kabuto asked. Still curious about this experiment Orochimaru desperately wanted. Quite simple. Orochimaru smiled. The child will not only feel merciful pain, but will perish from it. Good thing he's sleeping, he'll die in a dream. He smirked looking over at Naruto, who was blissfully sleeping. But I guess it won't be too bad, you're aware the child is blind? He asked. Well, even alive it'd be a waste of a human, Kabuto snickered. Kid, wake up, you're gonna get killed. Kyuubi screamed at Naruto. But Naruto just turned in his sleep, lightly moaning from a dream. Kyuubi roared. Still nothing. Minato wasn't bothered by the twigs that scarped and cut him as he zoomed from tree to tree, looking for the bastard. He had picked up some faint chakra signals coming from Naruto. But it was very faint, the kidnapped had taken him far, and Alcemo hidden. Minato growled, gritting his teeth. Naruto, his baby was taken. Of course he was to remain calm, not only for Naruto but to keep himself from breaking into a rage. Don't worry Naruto, Papa's on his way, he spoke to himself. While Minato tree-hopped as fast as he could, the tiny toddler kept on sleeping. Unaware of possible death knowing on his door, Orochimaru stroked his hand along Naruto's whiskered cheek, smiling as he used his nails to scratch the child, awaking Naruto suddenly. Owie! Naruto cried, touching his cheek, feeling a light warm substance. When he saw blood on his hand he started to whimper. Someone had hurt him, but Kyuubi only hushed him and started to heal the scratch that Orochimaru gave him. Ah, I see that demon has magnificent powers, Orochimaru said, smirking at the boy. Naruto turned his head towards the sound of the voice. Who's there, Papa? He called out. I can't believe the 4th son would be so stupid to fall for that. You honestly think I was coming to give you to your father? Orochimaru cracked up. Naruto gasped, pointing at the snake, although he was slightly off. You were the one who said he'd take me to my papa. Let me go. He gasped once he found out he was chained to some sort of rock. He began to panic and started crying. Frightened, he didn't know what was going to happen next. This man sounded scary, he lied too. Please, let me go. Naruto begged once more. I don't think so. Orochimaru leered. Papa. Naruto hysterically yelled. Your papa isn't here, nor is he coming. He told me himself, Orochimaru lied. Naruto gasped. No, it couldn't be true. His papa loved him. His papa promised to love him forever and ever. You've been bad, Naruto. He doesn't want you anymore. Orochimaru smiled evilly. Kid, don't listen to him. Kyuubi yelled in his head. You mean nothing to him, Naruto. Orochimaru continued to lie. Naruto felt a few tears start to form. His eyes were irritated, in much need of the cream that he hated with a passion. Not to mention the lies were starting to confuse him, causing him to suffer from a headache. He's replaced you. Shut up! Naruto screamed, a sob escaping from his throat. Kid, he's lying. I don't like your dad very much, but that jerk is lying. Your father loves you. He'd never let you suffer like this. Naruto wanted to believe Kyuubi he really did, but what this man had told him started to sound more and more true. Naruto thought of all the times he was bad at the hospital, or when he, Sasuke and his friends all ran away from school. And when he had Kyuubi make the fox mask. All of those things had disappointed his papa. And another thing, if your father loved you, why isn't he here? Orochimaru continued. He's back in Konoha, having so much fun with his friends and his new son. And new son? Naruto sobbed. That's right, in fact he waved goodbye to you as I took you out of Konoha, and right as I left I saw a boy and a new woman walk right up to him. He loves them more than he ever loved you or that slut Kushina. Orochimaru walked closer to Naruto, circling him like a predator his prey. Kyuubi responded by taking over Naruto's body and mind. Red chakra started forming around his small body and Naruto's once pale blue lifeless eyes turned red. Although it was alarming Orochimaru, he kept calm, remembering the chains and tightened wrists. Shut up, right now Orochimaru. Naruto shouted. Leave the child alone. Ah, Kyuubi no Kistune, the fox demon. We meet at last, Orochimaru smirked. Minato gasped and huffed, taking a breather, but for only 2 seconds before he began tree-hopping once more. He was alarmed when the chakra signal he picked up went from faint to extreme in a matter of seconds. Naruto, Have you summoned Kyuubi? Minato thought. I hope not. If so, we're doomed. Minato hopped on the ground. The chakra levels were highest here, but as Minato looked around there was no one but him and a few other Anbu officers with him. He looked up, then down, and then the realization hit him. Naruto. He called out desperately. He performed a quick jutsu and aiming at the ground. Hokage-sama, where are you going? One Anbu member asked, obviously confused. The ground soon became a large hole, but it wasn't enough. He knew they were deeper still in the earth. Performing the same jutsu, a light yellow ball was thrown once more into the ground. Papa's coming, Naruto. Shut up, I said be quiet. Naruto yelled, as Orochimaru just smiled. This kid is blind, and has to suffer enough. What more do you want? Oh, me? I want nothing. Except you. Orochimaru replied. Well, to be specific, your chakra. Like hell you're getting it. You might not give it to me, but that dumb child will. If I bribe him, Orochimaru smirked. Now that won't be too difficult, as you know, he controls you. He can come back into control of his own body whenever he wants. Oh really? Well, I'll come back then you'll really be sorry. Kyuubi had spoken too soon, because Naruto's eyes started to go back to the pale blue. He let out a loud sob and Orochimaru took his plan into action. He needed Naruto to be vulnerable and weak, unable to even think of his father coming for him, so the extraction should be easier. Naruto, it's really the best for both of you. You get to see your worthless mother in hell, while your father lives on happily with his new family. Everyone wins, hellied again. Naruto didn't care anymore. Those words, spoken so easily, made his heart feel like broken glass. Orochimaru stepped out of the room, and slowly and painfully Naruto's chakra started seeping out of his body into the tubes Orochimaru had placed inside of Naruto. Naruto let out a wail in pain. It hurt so badly, but he felt too exhausted to do anything but scream. Papa, Naruto cried. And another thing, if your father loved you, why isn't he here? He's not coming, Naruto. He's with his new family. He hates you. Kit. Kyuubi spoke. Naruto didn't answer, but Kyuubi knew he was listening. Kit, I know what that asshole is saying sounds horrible, but it's not true. As much as I hate your father for putting me in this cell, he loves you, he's coming, Kit. No, Papa hates me, Naruto sobbed. He found those words to be true. Everything Orochimaru had said was true. Otherwise, his papa would have come for him by now, surely. Naruto recalled all the times he threw a tantrum, or started an argument with his father. Or every time he disobeyed, lied, and the one time he ran from where his papa had told him to stay. He wouldn't blame his father for leaving him with this bad man. Naruto's heart broke. It was true, his papa hated him. With one final loud yell and the same jutsu, Minato had managed to break into the ground deep enough to where he felt the chakra senses. But he wasn't anywhere near Naruto. Damn it, he cursed. Naruto, where are you? He started to run. It was dark, but he didn't care. His baby was somewhere in this secret lab, kidnapped, cold and scared. Minato hoped Naruto wasn't hurt, or having things happening to him. Minato grit his teeth and ran faster at the thought of that sick snake-loving bastard touching his son. He hoped he wasn't too late. He found a steel door. There were curses and seals in a specific order. A trap. His first instinct had told him. But this is my child. I had to take the chance. Minato hadn't really recognized the symbols, writing or the markings at all. He had guessed Orochimaru had created them, or stolen. While trying to figure out what to do next, he heard a chuckle. He gasped, and turned. No one. Narrowing his eyes, he started to continue on the door. Smiling when he figured out all of the secrets. Putting his jutsu into action, he had managed to open the door. I did it, he exclaimed, happily. Not quite, a hiss came from the room. Minato turned and pulled out a kunai, throwing it, almost hitting the snake, but he dodged it. Not bad, fourth Hokage. There stood Orochimaru and next to him, smirking as well, Kabuto. Minato tried as hard as he could to not let his anger get the best of him, but... Where's my son? He demanded. Oh, the demon child, Naruto? Well, at the moment he's... The walls began to move, and from behind the walls was a large cage. Inside were hundreds of machines, tubes and Naruto. He was chained down on a flat rock, one large tube in his mouth, sucking out all of the red chakra from Kyuubi. Minato growled with anger. What have you done? He yelled. It's called extraction, the snake hissed. Minato's eyes widened. Of course, extraction takes while, but only a little of the Kyuubi's power is actually needed for myself, and once that is complete, I'll be able to do wonderful things, the snake smirked. I don't think so, Minato yelled, throwing a few kunai with paper bombs attached to them. Orochimaru and Kabuto dodged them, but it left a lot of smoke and quite a large explosion. Orochimaru let out a harsh cough. Once the smoke cleared and much to his dismay, Naruto and the fourth were gone. Kabuto, find them. Minato had told his Anbu officers to stay behind when he had gone in search of Naruto, and was he ever glad they did. They had started on a trap to catch Orochimaru and Kabuto, and once they saw the fourth come out with his son, they laid down the trap. It was a net, but secretly hidden in the ropes were paper bombs, ready to go off whenever the officers were ready. Okay, is the trap laid all over the ground? Minato asked. Yes, Hokage-sama, one of them replied. Good. Then looking down at his sleeping, frightened son, he narrowed his eyes. That snake is going to die for what he did. We will be all right here, Hokage-sama. Once we catch him, we'll bring him back to Konoha, one officer assured him. I don't want to leave you guys. Orochimaru is a sneaky manipulator, Minato answered, hesitating. Don't worry, we'll be fine, the other insisted. Minato nodded, trusting the others. Then he sprinted off to Konoha carrying his badly wounded son. Even though it was Kyuubi's chakra that was extracted, Minato didn't know the extent of the damage that had done to his son. Kyuubi would probably be fine in the long run, but Naruto, he shuddered to think about it. He really didn't want to do it, but he stopped tree hopping at a nearby creek. Laying Naruto on the soft grass, he took an article of cloth out of his bag, he usually brought one for medical purposes, and began wetting it in the creek. When he approached Naruto again, he started dapping the cloth at Naruto's face to clean off the dirt, sweat and a bloody D-scratch mark. Minato hastily started to wash Naruto's neck, when Naruto slowly opened his eyes. Sure enough, he couldn't see anything, but it was different somehow than before, but he couldn't explain it. Hey, sleepyhead, Minato greeted, alarming Naruto. Sleep well? Orochimaru didn't hurt you too badly, did he? Minato asked, now suddenly sounding concerned. Naruto whimpered and shook his head. Why is he here? Shouldn't he be with his new family? Naruto thought angrily. Kid, you know that's not true. Shut up, Kyuubi. Naruto yelled, and then turning from his father, hid his face in his knees. Minato felt hurt. What was his son doing? Naruto, are you okay? Minato went to reach out for his son, to comfort him somehow. He started to rub his back, but Naruto swatted his hand away. Don't touch me, Naruto yelled. Naruto. Minato scolded, but felt alarmed. Then he took in a deep breath. He couldn't get angry with Naruto, at least not for long, since he was his only son, his baby. Naruto. What's wrong? Minato probed. What did Orochi? Why are you here? Naruto shouted in angry confusion, turning towards his father. He could feel tears coming out, and he tried to wipe them away, but they just kept coming until they trickled down his face. Minato felt confused as well. Had he done something wrong? Did he hurt his baby? Or had Orochimaru? Why are you here? Naruto asked again, sobbing. Inwardly, he was glad that his papa was here. That Orochimaru guy was creepy. But Naruto felt confused by the things he was told. Were they true? Could he trust his papa? Why was he here now? Naruto, I don't understand, Minato told him quietly. I searched and searched for you until I found you and rescued you. Are you hurt? Am I hurt? Well, screw you, Naruto thought, bitterly. His dad probably didn't even care. It was all for show. His duty as Hokage, no doubt. Kid, watch the language. Your father's really concerned about you. Kyuubi spoke upon hearing Naruto's mental outburst. I said shut up, Kyuubi. Naruto told the fox angrily. What is he telling you? Minato asked, possessively. None of your damn business. Naruto yelled. He felt so confused. He didn't know what to think anymore. Minato was taken back. Just as he was about to reprimand Naruto on how he shouldn't yell at elders and swear, Naruto screamed. It's all your fault anyway. He yelled. Minato was confused now, his eyes widened and he gave a shocked look. It's your fault, I'm blind. It's your fault, Kasan's dead. It's your entire fault, so go back to your family and leave me alone. Naruto yelled, his voice hoarse, and he let out one final loud cry. Sinking his head into his knees and crying loudly, Minato thought of what Naruto had just said. My fault. It's all my fault, Minato thought. Kit, apologize now. No, Naruto stubbornly answered. Naruto, what family? Minato asked seriously, trying not to cry about what his son has just said to him. What did Orochimaru say to him? Orochimaru told me. You had another family. Another son. You didn't want Kasan anymore and you didn't want Emi anymore, Naruto sobbed. That's why you weren't coming. Naruto, that's not true, Minato spoke softly. I would never love anyone more than you or Kasan. And as for that replacement thing, that's a lie. Orochimaru lied to you, Naruto. There wasn't and never will be another son in my life other than you. Just like my wife, your mother, he told him, sincerely. Going closer to Naruto until he was sitting next to his son, he took the cloth and started to wipe Naruto's face, which was drenched in tears. So, all of what I just said now. Naruto thought, with a horrible, guilty feeling. He could feel the truth of his papa's words. Papa had never lied to him, well, at least he tried not to. It was always hard when he had go to the doctor and his papa didn't want him to be scared half to death, but normally, he always told Naruto the truth. Orochimaru had been mean, taken him away from his papa, lied to him about everything, just to get Kyuubi's chakra. But Papa had come for him and saved him. Oh, now he felt terrible. Apologize, Kit. I'm sorry Papa Tilda, Naruto sobbed once more. Orochimaru told me those things. And he said you weren't coming and I waited. Naruto cried more and Minato brought him into a hug, letting Naruto sob into his chest while he stroked his hair and closed his eyes, hoping this was all a nightmare and nothing else. I waited. For a long time. And it hurt. Naruto sobbed. I'm sorry I couldn't get there any faster, baby. I'm so sorry, Naruto. Minato couldn't hold it anymore, he let a few tears fall. There was no one around, just him and his son. Even if there were, he'd still cry. Whoever said that grown men don't cry was obviously lying. I'm sorry, for those mean things I said. I don't hate you, Papa. Naruto cried. Minato smiled at that. Thank God. I know, son, I love you too. It's not your fault, Kasan is gone. Naruto sniffed. And, not your fault, for me being blind. I'm so sorry. Naruto sobbed once more. I was so scared, and you weren't there, so I thought? Shush. It's okay, baby. I understand. Say no more. We've had a long night, so why don't you go to sleep? When you wake up, we'll be home and it'll be a new day. Minato insisted, picking up his son gently as he started in a sprinting mode back to Konoha, still having the energy to softly sing to his son while he carried him. Oh Minato, your family is broken. Kyuubi stared at the small blonde boy sleeping outside his cage. He took one of his tails and wrapped it around Naruto, warming him. What to do? He's so protective. I don't think he'll remarry, but Naruto couldn't even handle the thought of a stepmother, it would crush him. And I can't leave this cage to take matters into my own hands, and no way will I be able to convince the fourth to undo the seal so I can. Not after what I did to his village, not like I had a choice though, the fox grumbled to himself. Kyuubi thought long and hard. What could he do? Then he thought of an idea. Orochimaru had taken only a little of his chakra. That's it, he could give Naruto sight. All Naruto had to do was control it. Control, that had its drawbacks too. Kyuubi knew he didn't like Naruto to play with his chakra. Really, he couldn't blame him, but he's a child, he's going to be curious one day. Maybe tonight will be an exception. Kyuubi smiled at the sleeping Naruto. Get ready to freak, Kit. When you wake up, you'll see something wonderful. You'll see life. Cream was applied to Naruto's irritated eyes, but this caught Naruto off guard. The pain started to sting his eyes, waking him up. So took Minato longer than usual to calm Naruto down and apologize for thinking he could apply it while he was sleeping. After the cream, his bandages were applied and wrapped tightly around his head, covering his eyes. Okay, now swallow, Minato instructed, as Naruto tilted the glass and swallowed all the water which had his smashed up pills. After all of that, he picked up Naruto and carried him to his room. Not Naruto's room, but his. Minato didn't feel all that safe leaving Naruto alone that night, and he wanted to make sure Naruto wouldn't have any nightmares too. Okay, raise your arms. Minato instructed, trying to put a night shirt over Naruto's head. Papa, how do you see? Naruto asked, yawning. Another time, Naruto. Right now you're sleepy and it's past bedtime. Minato looked at the clock, it was actually 3 in the morning. Please, Papa? Naruto asked. Minato's son's pleas were hard to resist. This counts as your story, he told him playfully. Naruto nodded. Well, Naruto, how one sees, is your eye works in a similar way to a camera. Light passes through the lens of your eye and is recorded on the back of your eye, called the retina. Following me? Minato asked. Naruto nodded, he understood everything. And, did you know that for people who can see, their eyes see it upside down, but the brain flips it, right side up, Minato explained. So, everything is upside down? Naruto asked, amazed. No, Naruto, your eyes see it upside down. Everything is in its right place. Your eyes see it wrong, but your brain helps the eyes see it the right way. Well, your eye sends the picture to your brain, and your brain turns the picture the right way up and tells you what you are looking at. So you see things the right way up, Minato clarified. Papa, I hear people say someone is beautiful or handsome, am I handsome? Naruto asked. Yes you are, my prince. You're Papa's cute little boy. Minato told him, tucking Naruto into his king-sized bed. Now, it's late. Well, early. Get some sleep, Naruto. I know I won't, I'm too paranoid. He gave Naruto one last long hug and a kiss goodnight and made his way to his desk on the other side of his room, for he had work and figured it would be best to get it done before morning. He never noticed the red chakra seeping into his son's eyes through his bandages. Naruto woke much later in the morning than normal, since he'd had such a rough night. He felt something hot on his ear, he turned, and he could feel his papa breathing on him. Ew, Naruto cringed, trying to move away, and then a queasy feeling entered his stomach. He clutched it and moaned. He was thirsty. He slowly slid out of the bed and felt along the walls to his father's bathroom. He found the basket, which had some of his bath toys, including a plastic cup. He wasn't allowed a glass cup, unless supervised, but he knew the plastic cup was okay to drink out of. Feeling the taps of the sink for the cold water, he filled the cup. Taking a drink, he sighed in contentment. Then he scratched at his bandaged eyes and his forehead felt itchy. He groaned and started to undo the bandages. When he did, he flinched and squeezed his eyes shut. It was bright, something was bright. Wait, something was bright? He continued to undo his bandages and then, taking a deep breath, he opened his eyes. He gasped, taking a look in the mirror. He had crystal blue eyes, they were, in his mind, beautiful. Not only that, he had this cool hair. It was a color he couldn't tell. But he saw his face, his whiskered cheeks, and his hands, his face and the rest of his body. He gasped, taking a look around the room. Objects he used every day looked so weird, funny, and just looked cool. Everything, it was different. Papa! Naruto screamed. Papa! Papa! Minato was up in an instant, grabbing a kunai and racing to the bathroom. Naruto, what's wrong? He yelled, looking around for imminent danger. Pa? Naruto asked, curiously. Naruto? Minato asked, finally taking in Naruto's eyes, his now clear, blue eyes. He suddenly felt all these emotions, happiness, pride, and even disbelief. He fell to the floor on his knees to Naruto's height and placing a hand on his son's cheek. Naruto smiled. Papa, I'm handsome, just like you, he laughed. Minato felt tears roll down his face, and a smile widened. Oh, Naruto, my baby, you can see. Minato tightly wrapped his arms around Naruto. How is this possible? I think Kyuubi had something to do with it, Papa, Naruto replied, grinning much like his father did. He could see now how they were so identical. I can't believe my baby can see. Minato mumbled into his son's hair, tears falling from his eyes. Hey, can't you see? I'm not a baby. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. You'll always be my baby, Minato whispered, too happy to talk. Thank you, Kyuubi. Of course, with sight comes sightseeing. Which is what both father and son did that day. Minato couldn't help but smile. Just being in their own house was an adventure for Naruto. Naruto already knew the objects in his house by touch, but by sight he was amazed. Even the large TV in the living room amazed Naruto. But what really amazed Naruto was when he stepped outside. Minato was happy that they were blessed with a bright sunshine-y day. The sky was a bright blue and the clouds did not block the sun. Naruto grinned while waiting for Minato to undo the barrier around the property. Naruto was curious. "Papa?" he asked. "Yes, Naru-chan? Why is there a large wall around us?" Naruto asked. Minato cringed a bit then almost hesitated. He spoke, turning to look at a puzzled Naruto. Naruto, of course, never knew about the wall, but Minato never thought he'd have to explain the wall to his son. His son just a short while ago was blind. And had been for 6 years. Yes, he was more than happy to know that Naruto could see. But the questions Naruto would ask would be a painful bridge to cross. "Well, Naruto, you see, the wall is more for you," Naruto interrupted. "Because you're Hokage, right?" "Well, yeah," Minato spoke. That was half the truth. But Minato actually hired officers to build the wall because of the safety for Naruto. Minato one day took Naruto out of play in the grass since he was in his crawling stage, and Naruto rolled over and kept rolling down the hill they lived on. Of course, when Naruto was rescued by his father, all Naruto did was giggle while his doting father fainted and gasped while shakily clutching Naruto. Obviously out of breath for saving his child. "So, Naruto, I want to take you someplace. This is a cause to be celebrated." Minato smiled, holding up his index finger. Who, Papa?" Naruto asked, excited. "The hospital?" Naruto groaned. He didn't need sight to smell that awful smell of the hospital. He already knew of the hell just by smelling it. "I should have kept my mouth shut about my sight, then I wouldn't have to be here." Naruto pouted. Minato sighed. He went to reach for Naruto, to pick him up and carry him into the hospital, when Naruto pushed his arms away. I wanna walk," Naruto protested. Minato felt a bit broken-hearted. When Naruto was blind, all he ever wanted was to be carried. That, and Minato didn't want Naruto to trip and fall. Naruto looked around the room. It was strange and to his mind a hellish place. Small children with colds sat in their parents' laps and a few adults were either sleeping or filling out paperwork. "What is this evil and horrible place, Papa?" Naruto asked. "This is the hospital, Naruto. I want Tsunade to check with your eyes," Minato explained. Naruto huffed and folded his arms. It was a long wait, it always is in a hospital. Naruto took a look around him. No one was paying attention to Naruto until a nurse who remembered seeing Naruto a while ago asked out loud, "Aren't you blind?" That attracted attention. Pretty soon everyone in the hospital was looking at Naruto. Almost all of them had facial expressions of either jealousy, curiosity, or amazement. Naruto began to feel very small at the moment. Minato loudly cleared his throat, not looking up from the magazine. In an instant, people turned around, fearing the yellow flash for a second. Minato looked at Naruto, who had taken one of the side of his coat and hid inside. "You alright, Naruto?" Minato asked. Wrapping his arm around Naruto, he couldn't help but feel a bit worried. "Yeah," he lied. "I'm fine." Tsunade stared in disbelief. Minato couldn't help but smile while Naruto sat in his father's lap, arms crossed and staring back at Tsunade. "What, got something on my face?" Naruto rudely commented, receiving a light smack to his hand from Minato. Tsunade at first thought this was a joke, knowing the smaller blonde and his love for pranks. But when Minato was smiling, she knew this was for real. I could check," she spoke, bringing over the camera telescope. Naruto kept his eyes open wide as she took pictures. When Tsunade's pictures had developed, she gave the most puzzled face. Minato gulped. "Was something wrong?" "Minato, it shows his eyes haven't changed. How can he see when the pictures show he's blind?" Tsunade asked. Minato looked at Naruto. Naruto looked back and smiled. "Naruto." Minato sighed. "May I talk to Kyuubi?" Naruto thought for a moment. Tsunade was officially freaked out when Naruto developed red eyes and dashingly red long hair. Kyuubi had taken over Naruto's body. He yawned and stretched, but noticed he was sitting in the fourth's lap. Immediately he avoided Minato's lap like the plague and jumped down. Hands on his hips. "What do you want?" Kyuubi asked, still bitter and mean as usual to Minato. "Kyuubi, tell me the truth. As much as I like it, are you the cause for Naruto's sight?" Minato asked. For a few seconds, Kyuubi and Minato had a glare-off. Until Kyuubi smirked. "Yeah, I am, but my chakra won't last long. He should be able to see at least one a day for maybe 2 hours at the most." Kyuubi explained. And until he can fully control my chakra, he might be able to manipulate it so you won't be blind for life. Minato was surprised. All he had to do was work with Naruto on controlling the chakra and presto, Naruto wouldn't be blind anymore. Minato smiled. With Naruto not blind, he wouldn't have to worry so much. But that won't stop him from being a little protective. Naruto was still his baby, blind or not. Kyuubi frowned, then in the most sarcastic voice he boomed, meaning he's timed now. Naruto's eyes went back to their crystal blue and he smiled. Papa, can we go see Sasuke? Please? I want to see him. Naruto jumped for joy. Minato smiled and nodded. Alright, Sasuke's it is. Sasuke huffed and puffed. Exhausted would be an underestimate. More like I'm going to drop dead from tiredness was more along the lines of how he felt at the moment. He was sparring and had been for the past 2 hours. He had to beat his older brother. He had to. Sasuke admired his older brother like any younger sibling would. His brother, Itachi, was there for him when others weren't. Sasuke fainted. Taking a break wasn't an option. He had to beat Itachi. Sasuke. A voice called for him. It was Makoto, his mother. Sasuke knew there were to be no breaks, in his mind at least, but he wouldn't disobey his mother. Rushing as fast as he could to his house, he was surprised to see Naruto. For some reason, Naruto was different. He couldn't put his finger on it. It wasn't until he noticed the blue in Naruto's eyes. Sasuke gasped. Naruto guessed Sasuke figured out he wasn't blind anymore. Naruto grinned. Hey, Sasu-chan. Hello, Naru-kun. Sasuke, you can take Naruto out to spar with you, but be careful, Makoto smiled. Minato's eyes widened. Sasuke was what? Sparring? Are you sure that it's safe for them to spar at such a young age? Minato asked. Oh, of course it's fine, Makoto smiled. Itachi has been sparring ever since Sasuke's age. It's safe, and the targets are simple. Nothing to worry about, Hokage-sama. Minato still didn't like the thought of his baby near a kunai. Hell, he didn't like the thought of his baby growing up. Wow, I did it, Sasuke. Naruto smiled. The kunai was tossed and had hit the target. Not a bullseye, but Naruto could care less. Good job, Naruto, Sasuke smiled. He was overjoyed. Naruto could see. His best friend in the whole world was able to visualize with his surroundings. Of course Naruto explained to Sasuke how he used chakra, not explaining whose, to see better. Sparring was forgotten and Sasuke took Naruto sightseeing on his property. The Uchihas had a very large property, they even owned 4 acres of wooded area. It was slightly chilly and the sky didn't promise snow just yet. But Naruto and Sasuke had fun jumping into leaves that had fallen before. Naruto loved the orange leaves, he decided that orange was his favorite color. But now that he could see, he liked all colors. Sasuke showed Naruto the bridge that was above the babbling brook. They sat at the edge, their feet swinging and swaying. Naruto's ears perked up. What was that? He asked. What was what? Sasuke answered. Then he heard it himself. Ribbit. Croak. Then Sasuke got a brilliant idea. He wanted to show Naruto what that noise was. He smirked on how Naruto would react to the noise. Hold on, Naruto. I'll be right back. Sasuke ran off the bridge and skipped in the opposite direction of Naruto, listening for the sound. Naruto was preoccupied with the trees. He smiled. They were so pretty. He saw a rather orange leaf land in the water. But then, he gasped. That was him in the water too. He leaned over to see himself at a closer range, but felt himself slipping. Splash! Sasuke smiled, holding the large, fat frog. He giggled, then took off running to Naruto. Naruto! Sasuke called. I have something for you. Splash! Sasuke gasped, running faster to the bridge. Then to his horror he saw Naruto being carried by the fast current down the brook. Sasuke dropped and ditched the frog. He had to save his friend. Naruto! He screamed. He fainted and ran faster trying to save his friend. Naruto himself was trying not to die. The water was cold and froze at his small legs. He tried to breathe but water kept escaping into his mouth, and he started choking. What was worse was his sight was slowly disappearing. Naruto oh. Minato set his teacup down. Did you hear something? He asked. Makoto heard it too. That was her son. She quickly stood up and opened the sliding doors, darting to the voice that screamed, Minato right next to her. Itachi had came from around the corner and accidentally bumped into her and Minato. "Mother, I'm sorry, what's wrong?" Itachi asked. Hokage-san? Itachi, it's your brother. Where is he? Makoto asked. Sasuke? What's wrong? Itachi was confused but followed the two parents. He was confused. The last time he saw Sasuke was this morning before he went into the village. Sasuke had asked to train with him and he told Sasuke to go spar for practice and that he'd meet up with him soon. Was Sasuke in trouble? And the Hokage was here, meaning Naruto, Sasuke's friend, was here. Itachi closed his eyes, listening for any sign of the two children. Naruto, there it was again. It was Sasuke. Naruto, I'm coming. Sasuke had managed to find a large tree log that had fallen over and he ran ahead, giving him time to climb the log to save his friend. He reached his arm down. Grab onto my hand, he yelled. Naruto went to reach, but gasped. His sight, it was gone. Naruto couldn't believe it. He had sight not even 2 seconds ago. All the colors, shapes and faces. They were gone. He put his arm down. Sasuke screamed. Naruto, give me your arm. Sasuke desperately cried out. What's the point anymore? Naruto thought. All of that happiness he had because of his sight, it was gone. All of it, drained from his mind, heart and emotions. Everything felt blank and the colors he had seen for only a few hours were gone. That light, those shapes and colors. All gone. Now his world was in the pitch black he'd known his whole life. Naruto's body began to sink down deeper in the brook. Sasuke's screams became more and more faint and it grew colder. Naruto shivered, he tried to breathe, but water filled his mouth, choking him. Naruto dimly closed his eyes. I'm gonna die. A long arm and large hand reached into the water, yanking the blonde locks and pulling the small boy out of the water. Naruto wasn't breathing. The panicking father began to use 2 hands to press on the small boy's chest. While doing this, he prayed. His baby can't die. Naruto's eyes widened and he coughed out most of the water that was once in his lungs. Naruto, are you alright? Minato frantically asked, while patting his son's back. Naruto shivered against the cold wind, letting out a sob and burying his head into his knees. Darling, are you hurt? He asked once again. Papa, I can't see anymore. Naruto cried. One sting to the heart, and another reason to cry. Minato sighed. Hadn't Kyuubi told him that sight was temporarily and timed? He knew he shouldn't have let Naruto go so far from him. Picking up the smaller blonde, he held him close. Sasuke. Thank you for trying to save my son. Minato smiled at the younger raven. Poor Sasuke, he was still so terrified and shaken up he too was crying. He clutched to Itachi's shirt, crying softly. Today had just been a bad day. Or had it? As soon as Minato and Naruto arrived home, Minato decided Naruto needed a nap, a long one. He had changed Naruto into more drier clothes and taken his temperature, making sure Naruto hadn't had the start of a fever. He applied the cream to Naruto's eyes, but Naruto hadn't known what he was about to do that and he cried in pain. It burned and stung, but the bandages were applied and the sensations did linger but started to reduce. Now just rest, okay Naruto? Minato ordered. Naruto was in no mood to argue. A nap did sound nice at the moment. He rested his head on the pillow, snuggling into the covers. Minato sighed. Today had been going really good too. Why horrible things always happened to his son, he didn't know the answer to, and that made him mad. No, mad would be an understatement, furious is more like it. He hated how Naruto grew up blind and motherless. His son deserved everything and more in life. Minato felt frustrated. Maybe it is my fault he's motherless and miserable. He thought, Naruto would have a mother if I just. BNG bang bang bang. Minato, open the door. A desperate cry for help came from outside Minato's front door. He raised an eyebrow and gently opened the door, only to have Jiraiya to jump on him and slam the door. He panted and groaned. What are you doing? Minato asked. I was being chased. The pervert gasped. Minato looked out a window at a few teenage boys. They must have been 18 or 19. There were 5 of them and they all looked angry. Minato sighed. What did you do this time? He asked. I didn't know those girls were their girlfriends, I swear I didn't know. Jiraiya screamed. Minato rubbed his temples. Why must his old teacher be like this? I'll go calm them down, stay here and keep an ear out for Naruto. He's sleeping at the moment. Minato ordered. The pervert nodded, making himself comfortable on the sofa. Noticing a bag of chips, he moonched away. It took a while, but Minato managed to get the crowd of very upset teenage boys away from his house and Jiraiya. He promised each boy a restraining order for their girlfriends to keep the pervert away. And currently he was sitting next to his old teacher, staring at the TV. So, his teacher spoke with a mouth full of potato chips. How's Naru? Minato glared at his teacher, but soon his face turned a light green seeing the food fall from his mouth. It's a long story, he replied. The pervert smiled and turned. Minato. I'm an author, I like long stories, short stories and girls. I have time. He smirked. Minato smiled and shook his head. He began with what happened at the festival last night, and the kidnapping, Orochimaru, who was at the moment rotting in jail until the trial that was to be held later in the month. Minato had made arrangements, and Naruto's sight and how he lost it. The pervert sighed sadly looking at his ex-student. Minato shouldn't have to put up with this, he thought. Well, Minato, I don't know the sadness or pain you're going through, but I do know something you should do, from now and forever and ever. Jiraiya spoke. Minato gave a questioning look. Love and support him. He smiled. He's your son, encourage him and know you're there for him, blind or not. Minato smiled. Thank you. Jiraiya smiled. Oh my god, what a poetic and sweet thing I have said. I'll try that saying on my new girls. He screamed running out of the house. Minato following him trying to stop him from any perverted actions that would get him killed by any protective or angry boyfriends. Naruto had been depressed ever since that day. Even after Minato had taken him out for ramen last night. Naruto just hadn't been in the mood for anything. Minato was worried. Ever since the incident at the Uchihas, Naruto hadn't smiled, hadn't laughed, he wasn't happy, and it was driving the father crazy. Minato hoped that today at school, Naruto would cheer up. Alright Naruto. Time for me to go to work. Minato smiled. Naruto just stood there, holding his lunchbox, frowning. Minato bit his lip. I love you, he said. Love you too, San. Naruto mumbled, walking to his classroom. Minato sighed, heading to his office. It pained him to know his baby wasn't happy. Ever since Naruto was a baby, Minato had tried everything to make sure Naruto was happy. He didn't care how much it cost, as long as his baby was happy. Minato had told him and explained to him about the time limit he had for sight. Minato guessed he shouldn't have said anything about that, because Naruto only looked more upset when he finished. Sasuke noticed Naruto in his desk and smiled. Naru-kun is okay. Naru-kun? Sasuke asked. Naruto looked up, then back down. Naruto, for what happened at the brook. I'm sorry. Sasuke apologized. It's my fault. No, it's my fault. Naruto said. I shouldn't have did what I did. Sasuke and Naruto sat in silence for a while. Then Sasuke smirked, starting to fold ends and shapes in a piece of paper. Naruto heard this and asked what he was doing. Sasuke presented Naruto a paper frog. I wanted to show you a real frog. But, I like it. Naruto smiled. His name will Amagairu-san. Amagairu-san, I must show you to Papa, Naruto giggled. School had ended, school was already over and everyone had gone home except Naruto. His papa had somehow told Iruka that he would be running late in picking Naruto up and asked if Iruka would watch him for a few moments. Iruka hadn't minded at all, in fact he enjoyed Naruto's company. Naruto was quiet the entire time, playing with the paper frog Sasuke had made him. Naruto deeply loved the paper frog. Who cares if it was paper? His best friend made it for him out of kindness from the bottom of his heart, and that's what mattered. Naruto deeply loved his new friend, not caring at all that it was only paper. After all, his best friend had made it just for him and it was filled with Sasuke's kindness and love from the depths of his heart, and that's what mattered most. Naruto tilde. A singing tone of voice called out. Two large arms wrapped around his body. A sing-songy voice rang out as two large arms wrapped around his small body and squeezed him tight. Naruto was a bit startled. He was startled by the sudden contact and his body froze. He barely managed to get his voice out. It was shaky with fear and he stuttered. Why you scared me, his voice frightened. His voice barely an audible whisper. Oh, I'm sorry, Naru-chan. Papa didn't mean to, Minato said as he stroked his son's blonde hair, apologetically. Thank you for watching my son, Iruka. Minato said after a moment with a smile. It was no problem. The brunette smiled back, pleased to be of service to someone so great. Papa, I have to show you my frog Sasuke made for me. Naruto held up Amagairu-san and Minato smiled at the tiny, green, paper frog. It was slightly crinkled from Naruto handling it so much. Well, that was nice of Sasuke for do that, wasn't it Naruto? Minato beamed at his son, happy to see him smile again. Ready to go home? He asked. Naruto nodded and began gathering his books and papers. After it was all in his bag, he took his papa's hand and left the school. Papa? Naruto asked as they walked down the were still heading home from school. Yes, Naruto, are you alright? Minato was already on one knee with his hand raised up to his son's forehead, checking for fevers or any other signs of illness. Feeling his son's forehead for any fevers or illness. Naruto lightly pushed away his father's hand, slightly embarrassed. I wanted to ask you, is it hard being Hokage? Naruto was curious. He figured that since he was going to be Hokage when he grew up, he might as well ask someone who is the Hokage if it's hard or not. Minato sighed. How do I answer this one, he wondered. Well, Naruto, it's not hard, but sometimes there are tough decisions. Minato spoke. Like what? Naruto asked. One flashback of Kyuubi's roar and Kushina's scream, along with Naruto's infant cries flooded his mind. A flashback of his encounter with the Kyuubi flooded his mind. He remembered hearing Kushina's scream and the ringing it left in his ears. He remembered an infant Naruto cried in his arms, the sound tearing him away from his passing wife and to his newborn. He shook the memories out of his head. I'll tell you when you're older, Minato spoke, trying to change the subject. Naruto was lifted into his father's strong arms and carried the rest of the way home. He smiled, he couldn't wait to be Hokage. When the father and son arrived home, Naruto had passed out from a tiring and playful day at school. When the father and son arrived home, Naruto was passed out, clinging onto his father and his frog. It was a tiring day for him with lots of playing and learning. Minato walked through their house quietly and entered Naruto's room. He carefully released the grip Naruto had on him and laid him on his bed. Slowly, as to not disturb his sleeping child, Minato undressed Naruto and changed him into some warm pajamas. He tucked him into bed and placed Amagairu-san on Naruto's bedside table so it wouldn't get ruined. After taking a moment to admire his work, he smiled and exited the boy's room, silently closing the door behind him. The older blonde entered his own room and sat on his bed, his face crinkled with the older blonde was sitting on his bed, thinking. Tomorrow was Orochimaru and Kabuto's trial. The Anbu Black Ops have kept the two in separate cells, guarded 24 hours a day ever since they were caught. The Anbu Black Ops have kept the two separated, their cells at opposite ends of the jail. They were guarded 24 hours a day, every day since their capture. Who's going to watch Naruto? He asked himself. The trial was set for tomorrow, which happened to be a school holiday. This meant school wasn't in session and Naruto needed to be cared for. He knew Kakashi blamed himself for what had happened the last time he watched Naruto. The poor silver-haired teenager nearly burst into tears when he faced Minato, fearing Minato would hate him. Of course that was not the case. He sighed, Iruka couldn't watch Naruto and neither could just who was left. He shook his head, he was at roadblock. Ani won home? A cheerful call came from outside his window and Minato turned to find the source. He smiled at the intruder. You'll do, he said and his smile twisted into a mischievous smirk. Watch the kid? The pervert exclaimed. Jiraiya knew that Minato knew that he wasn't good with kids at all. However, Minato had no other choice. After all, Jiraiya wasn't exactly his first choice, godfather or not. Kakashi blames himself for when Naruto was kidnapped, and everyone else is busy. He explained, trying to convince the old pervert. Please? His words sounding suspiciously like a beg. But, Minato, I'm not saying that I'm going to treat Naruto any different from how I treat other people, but I don't know how to take care of a blind child. Jiraiya threw his hands up to emphasize his exasperation. It wasn't that he was being prejudiced, Jiraiya had no idea how to take care of a child, whether said child was blind or not. It'll be fine, Minato protested. I'll explain to Naruto that you'll be watching him, and he'll be on his best behavior. He usually is. Usually? The Toad Sage questioned. The toad sage repeated and raised a questioning eyebrow. Minato cleared his throat. So, I'll see you tomorrow, and that was an order. Now, Naruto needs his bandages changed every 4 hours. He doesn't like the cream that you need to apply, he complains that it burns. But somehow I think Kyuubi's helping him with that. The pills are to be taken afterwards. Crush up the pills and pour the powder into some water and he'll take it. Minato explained with a light-hearted smile and dressed his son for the day. Jiraiya stood in the doorframe and groaned. He couldn't believe he had been suckered into babysitting. As soon as an orange sweater was pulled over Naruto's head, the color Naruto had personally requested, Minato lightly brushed back the floppy blonde hair and kissed his exposed forehead. You be good for Jiraiya, okay Naru-chan? Minato asked, sweetly. Yes, Papa, Naruto answered, his voice quiet. Minato frowned at his son's blatant lack of enthusiasm. What's wrong, Naruto? He asked. Are you sick? Maybe I should stay. Minato was acting paranoid again, which made the old pervert angry. He didn't want to listen to Minato overreacting for the nth time. Look, Minato, I have this, Jiraiya said, shooing Minato out the front door. Okay, see you tonight, bye-bye? Minato nodded but stopped in the doorframe. He bent down and opened his arms, inviting his little munchkin into his embrace, layering the poor boy in kisses. Kissing his baby once more, Minato stood. With that, the yellow flash was gone. Kissing his baby once more, the yellow flash stood and like his nickname was gone in a flash, leaving only a blur of blonde hair as an indication he was ever there. The toad sage had to admit, Naruto was pretty easy to watch. All the little blonde did was either play with some toys or sit on the couch, listening to the TV. The pervert was bored, not to mention he was dreading babysitting when he could be enjoying the nude girls at the hot springs. He smiled, a very perverted smile. Hey, Naruto, he called. Naruto turned around, but Jiraiya frowned. Naruto was looking the opposite way he was calling him from. He shook his head and instead he turned the blonde to face him. How about a bath? He asked and smiled. Naruto could almost hear the mischievous smile on the old man's face. Papa gave me one last night, Naruto answered, confused as to why his crazy godfather would sound so excited about giving him a bath. No, this is a bath that helps you relax. How about your old god dad takes you to the hot springs? Jiraiya was so hoping Naruto would say, yes. He was quickly thinking of a plan to get some glances of tits and ass. He was quickly putting a plan together to see some naked women. Minato and Kakashi, along with 2 other high-ranked shinobi, stood outside the T&AAKA. The torture and assassination room. Minato unsealed the door, quietly opening it. Minato did some quick hand signs releasing the seal on the door and quietly opened could hear screams from both genders. The voices were either laughing psychotically or screaming out for mercy, most were caused by pain. They hollering for mercy or laughing madly, most screamed in pain. But Minato disregarded those voices. He wasn't interested in those whose bodies were being twisted into deformation. Nor was his attention diverted to those whom had been tortured beyond human imagination, prisoners who could no longer hold onto the fabric of human thoughts. No, he was focused on finding one cell in particular. The cell that caged his baby's kidnappers and stripped them of their abilities. But Minato wasn't looking for those whose bodies were being twisted into deformation. Nor was he looking for those that have been tortured beyond human thoughts, instead he was looking for a cell. A cell that held his baby's kidnappers. Finally arriving at the cell he so desired, Minato stared into the darkness and spoke in a harsh tone. You know, kidnapping the Hokage's son is probably the worst thing you could do. Minato harshly spoke after finally arriving at his destination. Heh. Tell me, Hokage-sama, how is the brat? Orochimaru asked in a mocking tone. Minato's eyes started to adjust to the darkness and when they did, he could see Orochimaru's hands tied behind his back. The rest of his body was wrapped in barbed wire. Any movement the snake lover made would rip open his skin, and that's something the sick bastard didn't despite all the pain the snake should feel. He still wore that disgusting grin and it made Minato sick. He was starting to feel glad that without Kabuto's medicine or his own chakra, he would perish in a few weeks' time. This is your trial, Minato spoke. Any last words? I wonder. Orochimaru said. I'm guessing Naruto's sight is timed or will ever come back. Minato, could he know about that? He wondered. None of that concerns you. Minato said after regaining his composure. Maybe. But what a shame it would be if that sight was killing him. Orochimaru smirked and Minato grit his teeth. He knew he was falling for a trap, but how could he ignore something about his baby? Especially something that could mean life or death. What are you talking about? It's the Kyuubi who's controlling his sight. Minato yelled, revealing secrets better left untold. I should know, he told me so. You do realize that the Kyuubi's chakra is evil. Why you would let your son play around with it is unbeknownst to me. The snake smirked. He knew he had caught Minato in his little web. All that was left was to spin him into the cocoon. Minato had enough. Orochimaru was filling his head with lies and doubts. He snapped his fingers and Orochimaru was dragged to the fourth's feet. He hissed in pain, but still Minato gave no sign of any emotion, especially pity. I hope you rot in the darkest pits of hell. He cursed at the snake and created his strongest jutsu. Rasengan, he called out as he punched right through the evil that tried to cloud his mind with doubt. Ah, he's so cute, one very cute girl commented on the small blonde. She was thin, with dark hair and big boobs, just Jiraiya's type. Naruto smiled, knowing the girl was talking to him. He couldn't see anything, but he felt hands and arms wrap around him, either ruffling his hair, washing his face or hugging him. Jiraiya himself couldn't be happier. All these girls, Jiraiya said with a smile. He's so cute. He's really your son, Master Jiraiya? A girl with long orange hair asked. He looks so different. Another girl with blonde and equally long hair commented. The endless squeals continued, and that's how the pervert loved it. Naruto, on the other hand, was a different story. While in the small waiting pool of hot water, he had maybe a minimum of 10 naked women surrounding him. Naruto, only 6 years old, was a heartthrob. He smiled, blushing at all the compliments given to him. He grinned, receiving lots of squeals of joy. When Naruto accidentally dropped his yellow rubber ducky and went searching for it in the water, he grabbed foreign to him. It was soft and squishy, and when he squeezed it, one of the girls yelped. No, no, no darling, don't touch that, she giggled, crossing one leg over the other, mid-thigh. Naruto blushed once more and continued searching for his rubber duck. Although it was a sight to see, a little, blind, blonde boy searching for a duck, without his towel falling off. Ha, ha, ha. Go get it, Naruto, Jiraiya yelled, enthusiastically, his smile never leaving his face. So, master, one raven-haired girl lustfully asked. What time is your job done? The pervert paused. What job? He asked, completely forgetting he was Naruto's babysitter. Minato burst through the unlocked front door. Naru-chan, Papa's home. Minato cheerfully called, excited to see his son after his earlier encounter. He frowned when there was no answer and his brow crinkled together. He searched the house for his baby. Maybe he was playing hide and seek? Minato thought, hopeful. He entered the kitchen and walked up to the table. He was going to look under it when he noticed a piece of paper with his son's messy scrawl on it. He picked it up and squinted to read it. He looked to the kitchen table where there was a note written. It seemed to have been penned by Naruto. Dear Papa, it read, and Minato shook his head. Misspelling already, Minato thought as he continued to read. Already misspelling, Minato thought. Jiraiya bringin' me to hot Spains. Bye-bye, Naruto. Minato reread the letter, trying to figure out what it was talking about. What's a hot Spain? He asked himself. Wait, he thought as it all clicked in his head. Jiraiya wouldn't, and as soon as he thought it he knew he would. Oh, master, you have such a way with this girls. One blonde smiled, hugging one of Jiraiya's arms, making sure to hide it between her large S. They bounced with everything breath and he felt a nosebleed coming on. And your son? She pointed to Naruto, who was snuggling against 3 warm bodies of naked women, trying to stay warm after running around in the cool air. Well, if he's as adorable as that, why not give me one too? Jiraiya's eyes popped open. Wah, no, he's going to give me one. One girl pushed another and soon a fight broke out. It escalated into a complete catfight involving all the women in the hot spring. Naruto was confused by the sudden loss of body warmth. Suddenly there was no one left in the water, and all the girls were arguing somewhere off in the distance. Nei-chan? He called out to them. His call was answered by the sound of the heavy doors to the hot spring being strongly forced open. Mixed in with the loud whoosh of the doors was his name. Soon 2 doors opened and he heard his name being called. Naruto, dear God. Naruto knew immediately that his was Papa. Papa, he called, running stark naked toward the voice. His feet were slipping on the damp floor, but luckily he kept his balance as his father was trying desperately not to look at the naked women, seemingly fighting over nothing. Minato tried so desperately not to look at all the naked women. Kushina, think of Kushina. He thought to himself, a seemingly useless mantra against the women. Papa, Naruto yelled with a smile as he reached his father's legs. Minato looked down at his son and his eyes widened with surprise. Minato's eyes widened. Naruto, where are your clothes? And where's Jiraiya? That last part sounded very deadly. He said Jiraiya's name like a threat, acid dripping from every letter. Naruto shrugged uncaringly, but shivered, so Minato took his off cloak and wrapped it around Naruto, desperately trying to keep the smaller child warm. Minato had kneeled down, was rubbing Naruto's shoulders, spreading warmth through the boy when he started talking. Daddy, I don't understand why Jiraiya likes girls. Naruto said. He says their boobs are nice, but they don't seem nice to me. Minato facepalmed and blushed. He was so never letting Jiraiya babysit Naruto again, ever. Even if it killed him. To-san, is it hard being Hokage? Naruto asked for the umpteenth time that day. Minato sighed, smiling. He set his teacup down and knelt down to Naruto. Naruto, being Hokage is not matched to taking care of you, trust me. Taking care of you is more of a challenge. Minato smiled, joking, but Naruto pouted, crossing his arms. Minato couldn't help but find that look so adorable. He couldn't keep himself from smiling. Finish your milk, Naruto, Minato said, standing up to do the dishes. Don't wanna. Naruto complained. It'll make you big and strong enough to be Hokage, Minato smiled, racing to answer the slug that appeared in the windowsill. A message probably about Naruto from Tsunade, no doubt. How will one glass make me big and strong? Naruto muttered to himself, tracing his finger around the rim of the plastic cup where his warm milk nestled in. He groaned. He figured when Minato's back was turned he could start dumping the milk in the sink. But that plan failed when Naruto was about to tip the glass and Minato forced Naruto to sit at the table till the glass was finished. Naruto sulked, sitting in his To-san's lap. I'm not gonna drink it. Naruto pouted. Minato sighed. Naruto, do I have to force you? He asked, frowning. Naruto shook his head and hid it in his knees. You won't have to, because I'm not gonna. But if you don't, you'll have to live in the hospital. Light bulb. Naruto jerked his head up, giving Minato a confused look through his bandages. Minato sighed, pretending to sound sad. Oh, boy. Here I thought it wouldn't come to this. Minato dramatically wept. Tsunade-san sent me a message saying that if you don't eat healthy, he added a sniff and a silent sob for effects. Then you'd have to live alone in the hospital. Please listen to my precious boy, Naruto. Minato couldn't help but smirk evilly as Naruto guzzled down the glass in attempts to not live at the hospital. Ah, that's my boy. See? It wasn't that bad. Minato kissed Naruto's head. After Naruto was given a bath, and he had fresh new sleepwear on, Minato tucked Naruto into bed for the night. Good night, Naruto, sweet dreams. Minato softly spoke as he kissed his son's soft forehead. Night, To-san. Naruto yawned, turning over to fall asleep in his bed. Minato had tucked Naruto into the covers a little tighter for warmth and making sure Naruto's bedroom window was locked. Not wanting another Kakashi incident, and started to wind up the music box that laid on Naruto's nightstand. Minato left the room and nearly leapt into his bed. He was so excused today that he knew he couldn't stay awake. Naruto was scheduled for a new appointment next week. That was what the letter was all about. Minato smiled. Naruto's act up at dinner was actually pretty funny. Minato closed his eyes, drifting off to sleep. Minato. Kushina smiled, holding up some cute baby outfits she found in the cardboard box. Kushina was about 7 going on 8 months pregnant and her tummy stuck out big time. She wore her long green dress with a white t-shirt underneath. Her long, red hair reached her ankles. Minato. It's so cute, she cooed, picking up a blue onesie with the Uzumaki crest on the back. Minato entered the room, smiling, holding a camera. Kushina frowned, putting the onesie down and folding her hands on her hips. Minato, you're a cameraholic. She grew annoyed when Minato took pictures of her every single day. But Kushina, you're so beautiful. Why not take pictures? He smiled, taking 2 more. Minato, will you stop? You're driving me, oh my god. He's kicking. She screamed. Minato rushed over, placing her hands on Kushina's round large belly. For a moment, he was silent, and his smile only grew when Minato felt the soft kicks of their baby from her stomach. He knows it's you. Kushina smiled. Minato only nodded, rubbing the heart area which he guessed where that baby's head was. Kushina, sit down. You need rest. He insisted forcibly, yet softly, placing Kushina into a chair. Kushina rolled her eyes. You're too protective, Minato. She joked, smiling. Rather safe than sorry. Minato pointed out, patting and rubbing Kushina's belly. Minato kissed his wife's head and placing a blanket over her. Minato. Kushina said, softly. Yes? Minato smiled. You have to promise me. No matter what happens with the birth, if I die, I want you to. Kushina, don't say such things. You're not going to die. I'll be there for the birth too. You're not dying, Kushina. Minato blocked out the truth in Kushina's words, knowing fully well that the birth may not go smoothly. Kushina bit her lip to prevent tears and placed a fake smile. Okay, I'll stop, you're right, nothing's going to happen. She lied, wincing as a hard kick was in place to her uterus. Now, let's see if Junior here will go to sleep for you. Minato softly smiled, humming to Kushina's belly as Kushina rubbed Minato's blonde hair. Minato's soft humming, Naruto's light kicks. This is what she loved about life. This moment right here was the best. I love you, Minato. She smiled. I love you too, Kushina. I love you both. Minato slowly opened his eyes. He sat up looking to the left of him where Kushina used to sleep. He sighed. It was only a memory. Minato looked at the clock. It was around 6. He had to wake Naruto up, get him dressed, feed him breakfast and send him off to school. Today was rehearsal day for Naruto's school Christmas play. Tusan? What if I'm not good? Naruto asked while Minato applied bandages to his eyes, wrapping it around his head. Minato asked, with the roll in his mouth. What if I'm not a good angel for the play? What if I screw up or forget my lines? Naruto asked, worried. Minato smiled. Naruto, for one you make a good angel because you are one most of the time. Naruto giggled. And don't worry about forgetting your lines. We'll practice them every night before you go to bed to time your speech. The father promised. Okay, Tusan. Naruto smiled. Minato brought Naruto his coat, gloves, hat and his scarf, and when they were ready Naruto climbed into his father's arms while Minato flashed to Naruto's school. Alright, everyone's here. Iruka smiled at his class of angels. Naruto fumbled with his halo. It wouldn't stay on his head and it felt prickly and made him want to itch his scalp. Sasuke sighed, helping Naruto with the glittery halo. Okay, everyone please take a script and we'll all be singing Oh Holy Night, Iruka instructed. Naruto smiled. He knew that song, it wouldn't be that hard. Since Naruto's class was the youngest, they would only appear once in the whole play and that was to sing the song, hence why everyone was an angel. Naruto forgot all about being scared if he forgot his lines, until later that night when he chose to use his sight for the play. Minato helped Naruto back into his angel costume backstage with the other parents. There we go, my little angel, Minato smiled. Naruto beamed, while taking off his bandages. Minato raised his eyebrow. You're using your sight for the play? The father asked. Yup. Naruto smiled. I wanna see everyone all at once. Minato pinched Naruto's cheeks and helped the little boy apply his wings and halo. Alright, line up everyone. Iruka called as the group of angels all lined up in their order. I'll be in the center row, Naruto. Minato smiled, kissing Naruto's forehead. Break a leg. Wait. Break a leg, Tusan? Naruto asked worried. Minato sighed, really regretting saying that. Naruto's group went out and Minato had the camera ready, videotaping Naruto's appearance. Naruto gasped. There were a lot of people. He gulped. Minato noticed Naruto's distressed face. Oh, he said silently. Sasuke. There's a lot of people. Naruto whispered. What's wrong, Naruto? Sasuke whispered back, but Naruto couldn't answer his because the piano began to play and the children began singing, except Naruto, who couldn't help but only stare at the faces in the audience. A few were pointing at him or glaring at him and Naruto felt his knees weaken. He was sure those were the people his papa always talked about when he thought Naruto never listened, the ones who hated him, saw him as a demon. Kit? Kit, Kyuubi called. Naruto shook his head. Huh? He asked. Play's over. Naruto. Minato called, rushing over to Naruto's spot on stage. Naruto smiled. Are you okay? You were pale the entire play. Minato asked, worried, already checking Naruto's head for a fever. Naruto brushed his hand away and hugged Minato's neck. Minato was surprised but reluctantly hugged back. What's wrong? Minato asked. Naruto shook his head. Nothing, Toussaint. That was fun. Naruto smiled. Minato laughed, not understanding Naruto at all, but as long as Naruto was happy, he was happy. Papa, Naruto chimed, hopping down from the stage. Are we going to open presents back at home? Ha, ha. No, Naruto, that's tomorrow night. And you had to get to bed early, because Santa comes tonight. Minato smiled. Santa-san? Naruto smiled. I've been good. I want a present. Minato picked up Naruto, carrying the child home. The two never did see the archangel Kushina walk beside them both.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.